School District 302, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first I'd like everyone to know that the board meeting, I'd like all board meeting attendees to know that the meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. So having said that, roll call when you're ready.
Mrs. Barber.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Mr. LePayton.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Here.
Mr. Rivas.
Here.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
And Mr. Lawler is absent.
All right, with 6 members present, we have a quorum. All right, so would anyone like to move something from the consent agenda to new business?
To new business?
Would you like to move I-4?
I want to pull I-4, yes.
I-4, and then should we make it J8, or do you need that to be closed session?
I may end up being closed session.
Okay. Anything else? Closed session?
Yes.
Board members have anything else? All right, so we'll move on to the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All right, and a roll call when you're ready.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler. Oh, he's absent. Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. And we'll move on to superintendent salutes.
Yes. Thank you. I'd like to introduce a guest that you may not know, and then a guest that you will know and remember. First of all, Dr. Jacoby, if you'd mind coming up, please. Dr. Hill. Oh, Dr. Hill. We have Dr. Jacoby and Mr. Hill here from the IASBO, and they are school business officials. Dr. Jacoby is the executive director. And Cheryl, if you would mind coming up, please. Director of our Kaneland Foundation. You'll see how this all fits together in a minute. Please go on this side. Dr. Jacoby's here. As you know, Dr. Fuchs has served on the IASBO board for a number of years, and I don't want to give away all of it, so I will transition to Dr. Jacoby and let you kind of fill in from there.
Well, thank you, Dr. Layden, and it's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you so much for giving us just a few minutes of your time this evening. Our foundation, the Illinois ASBO Foundation, awards a board member when they leave our service in our statewide organization with a contribution to their own foundation. And so we're here tonight to make that contribution in Julianne's name. Here to do that, and again, we are going to miss Julianne on our board, but here to do that is our president, Dr. Hill, who is the assistant superintendent in Community School District 93.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you so much for having us this evening. The role of a board member in a 3-year term is a very extensive exploration, shall we say, in different ways to make our profession better. And it was an honor serving with Dr. Fuchs for her 3 years, and it is my honor to provide a $1,000 check to the Kaneland Foundation in Dr. Fuchs's name.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks. That's exciting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Do I get to say something?
Sure.
Well, just that I think this community has known for a long time how valuable Dr. Fuchs' service is to us, and now we celebrate and appreciate that you've served the state of Illinois in a capacity that's, I'm sure, been really invaluable. So thank you, and thank you for honoring the foundation with this gift.
welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Jacoby and to Dr. Hill and to Mrs. Crosby for being here this evening, Dr. Layden. So it has been a pleasure to serve on the IASBO board. It's probably been one of the best learning experiences that I've ever had, an opportunity, and I will certainly miss the board members that I've served with. They are some of the best business officials across the state. So again, thank you all for being here tonight and bringing the money. Thank you.
And one more thing, not to ever miss an opportunity to advertise. The Kaneland Foundation looks forward to our annual golf outing that's coming up the third Thursday in September at Bliss Creek. Would love to have anyone who happens to be free that day. It's one of our major fundraisers. And the money that is raised from an event like the golf outing or the pork chop dinner or anything else that the Kaneland Foundation does goes directly to supporting teachers in the district as they introduce innovation. We're about excellence in education through innovation. Thanks.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Pleasure. Let's save a pork chop for you.
Believe it?
Thanks. Next are salutes. You can see our wonderful spring activities and athletic students. So without any further ado, I'll have Mrs. Maris come up, and then Mrs. Maris will introduce a couple people, and hopefully an acknowledgement, and thank you for Peter Goff for his years before he takes off. And then also, Brian Faulkner's on vacation. He couldn't be here, but I know that once Mrs. Maris is done, Mr. Hewells is here, and Mr. Hewells will share some of the middle school highlights. So, Jill.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good evening. First, let me share, I just got back from an amazing trip to Portugal. I got to go along with the Madrigals and the Bella Voce on their concert tour, and it was just absolutely incredible. A great group of kids, and a joy just to see Kaneland being represented across the nation and across the world. So that was the highlight. As far as our activities go, the end of our school year is kind of a wind down with a lot of celebrations that they do within their individual clubs and kind of regrouping to figure out what they're going to be doing the coming year and electing officers and things like that. So I don't have a whole bunch to report for you from the activities part. I'll let Peter speak in just a moment. But our FFA group did send 11 students to the state convention on June 12th and the 14th, and they're happy to report to you that Kyla Baldridge will be our new FFA vice president, but she was also elected as she served this year as vice president. She's serving as chapter president next year, and she was also elected as the 2018-19 Section 6 FFA reporter, and she helped to make history because this is the first time that whole entire group is made up of women. So it's kind of an exciting accomplishment that we're a part of there. They also have several grants and scholarships that have come in for their organization over the last couple of weeks, so that's exciting. So I am going to pass the mic over for the final time to Mr. Peter Goff with a huge thank you for all you have done, and especially for bringing back the Kaneland culture to us. Appreciate it. Peter Goff.
Well, thank you. This is probably a bittersweet day. It's bittersweet for me because this is the last time, but I'm sure they're happy that I don't have to take over these little spring things. Just to reiterate what the gentleman and Ms. Crosby said about Dr. Fuchs. What a wonderful lady to work with, and I tell you what, all the stuff that she learned from that board, she always passed on to me. So it's bittersweet for me because I won't be there, so she won't have all those little tidbits to throw at me anymore. But I think we need to give her another round of applause because she really makes my office go because she gives me the money. So she tells me yes and no, yes and no. So, and she always tried to say yes. So another round of applause for Dr. Fuchs.
Thank you.
All right, got my cheaters on. A lot of firsts. I can't see. I got my grandkids. And if my phone rings, I'm waiting for my next grandchild. So it could happen at any moment. The other one about put me under, but I can't understand this one. So just some quick highlights of our year. I know we have a lot of things to get going. First, with girls track and field, we had a lot of great things that happened. And I do have extra packets. The board is looking at them, but I'm just going to kind of highlight out of some things. Sierra Kuipers finished second in pole vault in Class 3A this year. And this year, for the first time, the boys and the girls had to go up to the highest class. So it was very competitive, and she was able to finish second. Rachel Rickman competed at the 3A, and she finished 12th. So a round of applause for them. Boys baseball, Coach Aversa's here, and I think we have our all-stater here as well. But a quick recap of the season: they went 21-9. They won its 4th regional by beating ACC 8-4 in a very exciting come from behind. We do have one all-stater, and he's back there, Luke Gomes. Luke, wave to everybody. What a wonderful kid. The best thing about him, he's a great kid. And he is on the IHSBCA 3A All-State team. He was one of 28 players selected. So congratulations to you, Luke. Thank you for what you did for us this year and your 4 years. Also on there, I know my coaches don't like to brag, but Coach Aversa was selected to coach in the ICA All-Star game with Luke and Robbie Dzinski, and they beat him 10-2 or something. So Coach Aversa, of course, was waving them all through. But another good year for boys baseball. So a round of applause for them. Girls soccer, our head coach, Scott Perillo, he's probably at a concert somewhere in St. Charles tonight. But I can say that stuff now that I'm leaving. Yes, I can. The Knights were able to reach the regional championship game this year. They were 13-5-2. They second place in conference, and they reached the regional final again for the 9th year in a row. So congratulations to them. I think Burlington Central beat them, and they lost either in the super or the sectional final. So we're in a very tough little part of the state here in girls soccer. So round of applause for soccer. Boys track had a bump up to 3A this year. There's some varsity school records set for the boys. Matt Rickman back there, the kid with the long hair, still hasn't cut it yet. He set school records in the 1600 and the 3200. And Clayton Hunula set a new record in the shot put here. They were both state qualifiers, and they were all state athletes. Matt Rickman finished 8th place in the 3,200 meter run this year. And also, he is the reigning Class 2A state champion in cross country. So let's give Matt a round of applause back there. And I saw Clayton this morning, but I think he had to go somewhere. But Clayton finished, he was 5th in the disc and 3rd place in Class 3A for boys track this year. So a round of applause for Coach Drendel and his group. We had the inaugural boys lacrosse this year, and one of our coaches, Ron Shaw's back here. Ron, raise your hand, please. Okay. For the first official season for lacrosse was an action-packed season that produced a first-round playoff overtime victory over rival Batavia. So they are in the record books because they already won their first state series game. So they did a great job. I think he said he has 18 incoming freshmen for next year, and only 2 seniors graduate. So they will have another great team next year. So congratulations to boys lacrosse, and Wes Williams was their head coach who volunteered. So a round of applause to him as well. And we have some girls in these bright, I don't know what color they were. They're the color of the softball. But they had an all right year. I mean, in the middle of the year, I had to talk to Coach Kiefler all the time because he was on the edge. They lost 4, but came storming back, finished with a season record of 27-10, 9-4, second place in conference. They avenged Sycamore beat us back-to-back nights, but then we beat them 10-0 in the regional final game. So a round of applause for avenging that. I like to say that too a lot. So all conference first team was Donatella. I call her Donnie. I don't know how to say her last name. I call her Donnie Softball. Donnie, stand up, please. And Hannah Theobald. All conference was Haley Roach and Rose Roach. And then in the state series, for the 4th year in a row, we were the regional champions, sectional champions, super sectional champions, and then they finished second place in the Class 3A state finals. So that's 2 trophies in 4 years. Round of applause for our girls softball. Before I go to the all-state athletes, Coach Kiefler was awarded the Coach of the Year out of the Marengo sectional. So let's give Coach Kiefler a round of applause. And for all-state athletes, 3rd team was Hannah Theobald, 2nd team was Haley Roach and Rose Roach, And the first team was Donnie Softball and Emily Erickson. I don't even know how to say her last name, even come close. They asked me and I go, yeah, I just call her Donnie Softball. So, but another round of applause for them as well. So. I'll end on a couple things real quick. One, I had to do the radio talk, a call-in show to WSPY with Mr. Teckenbrock. And he asked me about my 4 years here. And so I did a little research because I knew what he was going to ask me. So I went back and kind of looked at everything. In the 4 years that I had the greatest experience of my life here, we have won 17 regionals, 9 sectionals, 2 super sectionals, 11 conference championships, and 4 consecutive years in a row we won a state trophy. And I always try to put this in perspective for the kids. I've played in high school and coached in high school and have taught for 32 years. The only time I ever came close was a super sectional once. But to have 4 state trophies is very, very exciting. And I want to pose this to the kids coming up from the middle school. You're coming to a great place. You have a great bunch of coaches, and they want you to do well. You have teachers that want you to do well. You're going to be in good hands. And I'd like to thank the Board of Education for listening to me ramble, listening to my goofy ideas, and letting me be me, letting me have the time of my life. So my last day is Thursday, but I just wanted to thank you guys so much for what you've let me do here. And Kaneland will always, always be a special place. Thank you very much.
You will be missed, Mr. Goff. I want to take a moment. I want to take a moment to also introduce to you the newest member of our administrative team, and that is David Rollman. He is our new athletic director, and I want to thank him and Peter for all the hard work you guys have done over these last couple of weeks, totally off the clock and just working to make sure that this transition is extremely smooth. So David comes to us living here in the community. He's got 2 daughters that will be freshmen and sophomore next year at the high school and live here in Elburn. So I think it's just going to be a great addition. And Peter's really thrilled because tomorrow we have our admin retreat and David gets to join us and he's out of an all-day meeting. So thank you. And I'll pass it over to the middle school.
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, and another embarrassing moment for Dr. Fuchs. In the winter, I have this little thing called a school bus that I keep here every day. And one night in winter, I try and go back to the high school at about 7:25, and I get about a quarter mile down the road, and it just dies. Okay? Bottom line is, Dr. Fuchs sat with me, and I got to sit in her car for like 45 minutes until a tow truck came. So not only is she awesome in everything that she does at the district office, she's just a great person and kept me company in a very awkward situation for me.
Thank you.
And secondly, Peter, it's Donnie Samacy. Okay?
I like Donnie Softball better.
All right, I have 2 groups that I need to recognize. We have, first of all, a limited bowling opportunity that really happens in April, and I want to call up Coach Tremblay to speak briefly about that.
That's fun.
I laugh because I don't think our school knew we had a bowling team either, and I see your faces are like, what? So, yes. We've had a team for 5?
Yeah,
5-ish years. And it's whoever can make it kind of thing. The kids, for a while, we did do an after-school kind of program to try and help boost that and just give some more opportunities, but just didn't work out the last couple of years. So it's really on the kids to go practice, to get together, and they did. And this year we had, for the first time, we took down a full girls team and then almost a full boys team. And where we didn't actually qualify for state for the teams, we did individually. So we had Corbin Vines. He came in at 11th. He had a high game of 255 with a 1829 series. So, yeah, there's no boys team at the high school, though. Okay. I'm just saying, state trophy number 5?
Turn that down.
I mean, is that okay that I say that here? All right, girls sectional, or the girls, Alexis Vital, she showed very well. She also got 11th at the state finals, and she bowled a 1651 with a 165 average. So I'm very proud of all the kids. I took down Alexis Vital, Jenna Harper, Corinne Gatewood, Rachel Peters on the girls' side, and then Corbin Vines, Hagen Rank, and Shane Doherty. So, thank you.
And at this time, we need to recognize our track program. We had a very successful track program, so I'd like all the athletes to please come up, and coaches as well at this time, while we can make some comments about you.
Get used to it. Oh my gosh, she's gotten tall.
So as they come up, this is actually the 8th year that we've had track, and we've had an opportunity to go down to the IESA state meet. And we've had varying levels of success, but in terms of this group, the people you see before you are all state athletes, okay? So really quickly, our 8th grade boys and our 8th grade girls were conference champs, correct? Sectional champs, and then, although we have 7th and 8th graders here, quite a significant group of 8th grade athletes and 7th grade athletes that are all state. In comparison, I think I just got a note here, we've gone now, with this group, we have 46 all-state athletes. This group went from 35 to 46. Last year, we only had 2, so it was a very successful year. I'm going to start with Libby Saloga. Libby, just a minor. She was state champ in pole vault. Okay?
That's pretty cool.
Coach Self and I hold a bungee cord, and that's what she practices over. But thanks to the Eagle Scout Grant Wilk, we have the runway here, and we use it in practice, and it's a great help, and obviously it paid off. Corey Phillips. Corey qualified in the 200 and actually got 6th in the 200 individual race, and his 4x2 team, composed of Josh Dornink, who's not here, Jay Sycon, Cordell Williams, who's not here, and who am I missing? Lucas Bass. That's my 4x2 team, or our 4x2 team. They were 6th in the state with a time of 1:39.11. And then another individual that qualified in 2 events, Olivia Stoker. Olivia ran not only in the 400 meters, she got a 7th in the 400 meters with a time of 1:01.54, but also the group of girls around her was our 4x4 team. They placed 8th with a time of 4:21.20, and that includes Taylor Seaton, Emily Segrist, and Malia Slukol, and Taylor, I already said Taylor, who am I missing? Maddie Mumm, of course, who would I forget? Maddie Mumm. So please, a round of applause for them. Coaches, anything I'm forgetting?
You just want to thank the sports boosters for all their support.
Exactly.
For sure.
All right. Thank you. Let's get a picture together.
Okay. So any other salutes? No? All right. Thank you all for coming. If you'd like to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're more than welcome. If you'd like to sneak out, that's A-okay.
Chris is the only one.
I know. Seriously.
Yeah. All right, so the next item on our agenda is public comment. There are two opportunities for public comment, one now and one at the end of the meeting. First, we have a few rules for public comment. The board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into debate or respond to questions without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you stand, state your name and village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. You're encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. The floor is now open to public comment. None? All right, seeing none, we will close the floor to public comment and move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains the following action items: approval of accounts payable and payroll for June 2018, approval of treasurer's report May 2018, approval of minutes of the May 30th, 2018 regular meeting, the amended approval of resignations of employment of staff, approval of prevailing wage rate resolution, you are correct, that was closed. So I-4, the amended resignations of employment and staff has been pulled. So we'll go back to I-5, the approval of prevailing wage rate resolution, the approval of destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from November 2016, the approval of educational support staff, non-speak, bus drivers, and food service employee handbook, second reading, the approval of transfer of money from Fund 21 to Fund 31, approval of NIA Northwestern Illinois Association election ballot, the approval of participation in Safe Schools program for the 2018-19 school year, the approval of superintendent's contract, approval of memorandum of agreement for the executive director of the Kaneland Arts Initiative, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report, the FOIA report, the field trip notification, and the conference attendance fourth quarter professional development report. So I would like to entertain a motion for people to approve, for someone to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
All right, roll call when you're ready.
Mr. LePayton. Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt. Aye. Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. All right, so we'll move on to new business, the approval of the 2018-19 tentative budget for Fox Valley Career Center.
Yep. As you know, June, we do both the approval of tentative budgets for Fox Valley Career Center and the tentative budget for the entire Kaneland School District. So at this time, I know Julianne's going to go over both in great detail, so I'll go ahead and send the first one, J1.
All right, thank you very much. For Fox Valley Career Center, as you know, the Kaneland School Board is the administrative agent for Fox Valley Career Center. Fox Valley does have its own board of directors comprised of the superintendents of the participating school districts. With regard to Fox Valley's budget, primarily the revenue comes from tuition. Each student that goes there pays, or the student does not, but the schools districts pay on behalf of each student for their enrollment tuition. They also get a small amount of money, of state grant money. This year we believe that there will be about $282,000 from the state. And then their projected enrollment right now at this time is about the same as last year this time. It does fluctuate depending on schedules and final course selection and things like that as the high schools settle into the fall. Let's see. The tentative budget for Fox Valley is balanced with revenues exceeding expenditures by $3,161. Please remember that Fox Valley has two funds. They have the education fund and then the child care fund. And both funds are balanced with a surplus. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on any of their line items. I presented the budget to you in a variety of ways so that you could see some different summaries and how it rolls up into the budget.
Any questions?
Is that shows interest on investments? Is that just interest on money waiting to be sent out, like we get interest on?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. They collect their tuition in 2 payments or 4? What do you think about that? In multiple payments, and while they're waiting to pay out salaries, we invest the money on their behalf. I do that out of the business office. We invest any money that's just sitting there to make sure that you're getting something.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you got it.
Julian, I see we're adding a couple of students from East Aurora. Is this our first time, or?
No, they've come and gone several times throughout the past few years. Recently, though, I believe they're joining us. Dr. Layden, do you remember, is it the welding program or the auto program?
I think it's the auto program, and there's about 16 or 17, and as Dr. Fuchs mentioned, there is some fluctuation with programs. Sometimes districts will pull a program back, so the numbers vary a little bit and the programs vary.
But they were part of it. It's just that they're just adding some, sending some students. If you will.
They're not one of the member districts, but they do pay a tuition fee above and beyond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Nope. If there's nothing else, then I would like to entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the 2018-19 Fox Valley Career Center tentative budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Mr. LePayton. Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Farber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt. Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. And now we'll move on to the approval of the 2018-19 tentative budget for Kaneland School District.
As Julianne's setting up, I would like to take a second just to share the amount of time and effort and work that goes in from Dr. Fuchs and the entire business office. It's a couple-hour presentation now, and we talk about it more in September, but it's a number of hours of work and teamwork that goes into it. So while we're applauding Julianne for everything else tonight that is going on, we'll tell her thank you for this too. So
There you go. This is not my budget. It is truly our budget. And tonight's budget could not be the way it is without the support from the Board of Ed and all of the administration and staff. We've worked really, really hard in the past 2 years to reduce planned expenditures by over $1.5 million. I am happy to report that I am bringing you a balanced budget tonight with a small surplus. So let me go through that, but we've done it. We had the deficits. We've worked hard at correcting them, and so now tonight we have a balanced budget. So tonight, our different topics, go ahead. I'll review the calendar. I'll review some highlights from 17-18. I'll share information with you about 18-19. I have a revenue and expenditure summary. I have some budget challenges, and then give you time for questions and answers. So if you will, please turn to page 3. I'm so excited. I remember to put page numbers on this year.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. It's one of the last things I do after I put it all together, because it's coming from multiple files. So I'm very thankful to have page numbers. On page 3, this is our budget calendar for this 18-19 budget. Please notice, we started preparing for this tentative budget back in August. So we've been talking about it, we've been planning, we've been cutting, we've done everything that we've needed to do to get to this point. At this point then, during the summer, we will continue to tweak the budget. We will continue to add things that have been overlooked or needed in preparation for September. And we will bring a final budget to you at the September 10th meeting. After the board approves the tentative budget tonight, we'll place it on file for open public inspection. Additionally, we'll place it on our website so that anybody wants to look at it, they can. And there will be a copy of this presentation on the website as well. So the one question that Dr. Layden and I have, we can either discuss it now or later, whatever President Barbara would like. The past couple years, because of our challenges, in August and September, we've taken the board through an extensive process of reviewing assumptions for revenues and expenditures. I'm still going to need to use or have assumptions because that's the only way I can build the financial projection model moving 5 years out. The question is, do you want to do it over 3 meetings like we've done? Do you want a condensed version? Do you not want to do it at all? You've done it enough. What is the board's pleasure for accomplishing that task?
Anyone have strong feelings?
I don't think we need to go through it for 3 meetings at this point. Well, I guess with our absent member,
He's been through it once, but yeah, not more than that.
We can always meet individually with any board member who has additional questions too. We've done that in the past.
1 meeting?
So,
I mean, I think the exercise it's a useful exercise to go through.
To remember everything that's in there, the big triggers and the levers and what causes what. Yeah.
I'm in agreement with that as well. Whether it's 1 meeting, 3 meetings, I don't know what it takes. I don't recall the details of what happened in each meeting.
Sure.
We did like revenue, expenses, and then
fund balance.
Fund balance.
Yeah. So we can combine them. What we can do, let me plan to do it in September. We'll start with 1 meeting. If it becomes too cumbersome, we'll split it back up. And we'll table some part of it, carry it forward to the next meeting, but we could try it in 1.
Sounds good.
All right. Dr. Layden?
Everybody?
Yeah.
Does it change in your view now we got down to potential balance? It doesn't, right?
No. From year to year to year, there are minor tweaks, but the process is really the same. We look at what CPI is, we pick a number and hope for the best. We look at new growth, we take averages, I make a
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 2 years ago as we were getting ready for the planned reduction of the planned expenditures. I think part of the reason why we broke it up into 3 because of the fact that the board only goes through it once a year, and it's hard to remember year to year. So we tried to more clearly delineate it, and that's why we started that. So that's why we just Julianne and I, or Dr. Fuchs and I, touched base just to see if that was something you wanted to continue, or if based on the current fiscal situation, we could do it in 1 meeting.
I also think extensive talks about the fund balance. I mean, other than, kind of an overview of, are we within the policy and things like that. I mean, we don't have a lot of excess that we need to, that we're going to be spending down or anything like that. So, I would think that the discussion on that specific topic might be shorter.
I would agree with you. We're going to have our 45 days at that time. Even at the end of this year, we'll have our 45 days because of the extra state payment that we received on Friday kind of thing. So I agree with you. It's not going to be in abundance, but at least we're not looking to cut more. So we just need to maintain. Okay. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Moving forward then, the September 10th then will be the final budget. At that point, I will present the budget to you on the state form. There won't be a presentation. I'll give you any updates that we have over the summer, and it'll be quick and just perfunctory pretty much. All right, Chris, thanks. All right, so starting with the review from 2017-18, just some highlights. Last year this time, you approved a budget at $58.4 million for operating with a total of $71.6 million. Our actual operating expenditures came in at $57.4 million, so we were under budget, so that's good news. And then total expenditures at about $70.5. Our enrollment for the 4th or 5th year in a row continued to decline. During the 17-18 school year, it was a decline of about 2.1%. You can see the various salary increases that were caused with that budget. The state of Illinois did a major shift during the 17-18 school year from general state aid to the evidence-based funding model. Our district received about $6.8 million in evidence-based funding, which included the former general state aid. They also put in there some of our other monies, extraordinary for special education, personnel, and summer school, as well as bilingual TPI. Those are all grants that we would receive as a mandated categorical. They're now included with the evidence-based funding model, which is wonderful because that means we get that money in a timely manner. The state does continue to place a priority on the evidence-based funding. They send those payments out twice a month, every month, from September through June. So we are currently waiting for the last payment of the EBF payment. It's about $329,600. It should be in the bank pretty quick here because the comptroller released it. It's just a matter of timing now. Additionally, as of the Thursday, or Wednesday, Thursday, when I did the tentative budget, we were waiting for 2 more mandated categorical payments. The comptroller last week released that third quarter for this fiscal year. So that got into our bank account on Friday after everything was done and sent out. So where it says we are waiting for 2, we're now waiting for 1. We did receive it. I confirmed it this morning when we got back from the weekend. That means the state only owes us 1 more categorical payment for fiscal year 18. It also means that we received 5 of 4 payments this year. 2 of them were for fiscal year 17, and then 3 of them were for fiscal year 18. They owe us 1 more. I'll be very curious to see if they pay us before August 31st, because as you'll remember, if during our audit season, which the auditors have already been here and they're working, if we receive revenue within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year, they will accrue that revenue back to the current fiscal year. If it's after August 31st, then it will go on next year's audit. So I'm very curious to see if we get 6 payments on this fiscal year. Very, very, very unique time. If you'll recall, there's a fall election, so who knows what will happen in an election year in terms of payments. Let's see. Okay, go ahead. So the district is projected, this is good news also. We are projected to end the 17-18 school year with approximately $320,000. At that time, I put plus any additional categorical payments. So we are actually going to end 17-18 with a surplus of about $1.3 million because of that extra payment that we didn't expect. We budget for 4 payments, and we got the 5th payment in this fiscal year. So again, that will be showing as positive surplus. So lots and lots of good positive news tonight because the state of Illinois are making their payments. So I'm happy to report that. We did continue to use Forecast 5, formerly PMA, to update our 5-year long-range plan. That's how we determine the amount of money that needed to be reduced for planned expenditures. We reduced about 1.5, 1.7 going into this budget, and we did about the same amount last year as well. So we've worked really hard at tightening our belts on the expenditure side of the budget. Whoops. Before I carry on and move forward to the 18-19 budget, are there any questions on the 17-18 fiscal year that is ending this week? Our books are closed for expenditures, but we will continue to record revenues through Thursday. We don't work Friday. So through June 30th, we will continue to record revenues, but expenditures, they're done. What is in your packet tonight, that's it. So we closed the books last week because you all have to approve them. Right. So we have no ability to expend from the time that we put the board packet out until the end of the month. Are there any questions on 17-18? All right, thank you. Moving on then to the 18-19 budget. Tonight I'm asking that you adopt a $58.5 million tentative budget, operating budget, total tentative of $72.3 million. Please note that's only about $100,000 more, or 0.2% than last year's budget at this time. So that's really, really showing a lot of fiscal responsibility with regard to expenditures. Each of our funds, our operating funds, will have a small surplus. The education fund about $73,000, O&M about $96,000, and transportation about $8,000 for a total budget. The working cash doesn't have any expenditure, so it's a little over $100,000, but that gives us an operating budget projected to have revenues over expenditures by about $286,000. So that totally shows the work that everybody has done in terms of moving from an $800,000 deficit all the way to positive. So again, kudos to each of my colleagues for the work that they've done on that. Our operating revenues are projected to be about $58.8 million, which is about $1.1 million more than what was received as of June 19th. That does include of about $1.3 million more in from the tax levy. So the total is only 1.1 more than last year, but the levy alone is 1.3. It's because this is actual, not budget to budget, that's why. So it's a little bit goofy there, but we have more revenue expected. Our operating expenditures are expected to be 58.5, again, about 2% more than what was spent. I used the actual numbers in 17-18. I've got our salary increases in there. On an average, it's about 1.8%. We do have the teaching staff and speak staff, which are both unknown at this time, and we'll be learning those hopefully at some point prior to the final budget. For sure, we'll know the teaching staff. We'll know that one on September 1st, because we're going to wait all the way through August 31st to see what revenues are recorded because of the formula that we're using. And then the speak staff, whenever our bargaining sessions are over, we'll be able to announce that as well. So moving on to the revenue summary, this is not news to anybody. Our property taxes in this district make up the largest portion. It's about 70-some%, and then the rest of it local. That's your all of your fees that we charge, sports fees, textbook fees, lunch fees, all of those. Total local revenue makes up about 80%. Our state, coming from the evidence-based funding and mandated CATs, remains the same at about 18%, and federal revenue at about 2%. So not much has changed on the revenue side. Pedro, that kind of goes back to your question, do things change much? Not really. They might get tweaked a little bit, but the percentages and the pie remain very, very consistent. On the expenditure side, we record expenditures in a variety of ways with long account numbers. One of the ways that we can then calculate it is to see how much we're spending on instruction. We spend about 52% on instruction and then about 44% on instructional support. So that's everybody who supports instruction. That's a total of 96%. The other 4% you can see in the pie chart is comprised of tuition or payments to other government services. That would be our tuition to Fox Valley Career Center, as well as our tuition to Mid-Valley Vocational Center for any students that attend there with special needs. When we look at our operating funds, the education fund, of course, is the largest at $47.6 million. This is where all of our salaries and benefits come from, and technology. Anything having to do with the classroom comes from here, from the Ed Fund. Additionally, revenues for this fund are your evidence-based funding, grants, mandated categoricals. Again, you can see the salary increases. Please note that in the final planned reductions, we reduced FTEs by about $800,000 is what we think. So that was significant. And then lastly, this fund is projected to have a surplus of about $73,000. In the middle there, you can see the transportation fund. This fund is used only to record expenditures related to transporting students. That would be to and from school. It would be all school-related field trips, all athletic trips, basically anything for special education, all transportation of students. The revenues for this fund come from the tax levy and then the reimbursement from the state for transportation expenditures from the prior year. The other thing that you need to know is I did end up having to put in some evidence-based funding into this in order to balance the fund. And so I haven't had to do that in the past, but it worked out because of the way the levy changed. If you'll recall, when we levied, they removed the $4 cap in the ed fund so we could raise more money in the education fund, which is where we needed it. So when I lowered the transportation fund, it lowered it just a little bit too much in the sense that we could have used a little bit more money in there. So finding that balance back in November, December, if you'll remember, those are all built on estimates. So I think I ended up putting $700,000 of EBF money into transportation. And then that fund is only showing a surplus of a little over $7,000. So it's our tightest fund in terms of trying to keep it balanced. Operations and maintenance is $5.6 million. This one is used to maintain our schools and our properties. This one, our biggest expenditure is our custodial contract, which is bid. Additionally, snow removal, all of our capital projects, and then all of our salaries and benefits for our operations and maintenance staff. Those are some of the things that come from O&M. The revenues for this fund come directly from the levy, no other sources this year. Oftentimes I have to use some of the GSA or EBF money in this fund. This year I didn't have to, so that worked out very nicely. This year, if you'll recall, we are doing the Kaneland High School gym floor and the bleachers, the east gym floor. We're resurfacing the track at Harder, replacing some fitness equipment. Additionally, we have masonry projects and seal coating at several different schools. And this fund is showing a surplus of a little over $95,000. I just got one more slide, and then there'll be time for questions. So this is just some general information and assumptions. If you'll recall, for the evidence-based funding, we are in Tier 2. Each year, those tiers get evaluated depending on how much money the General Assembly can add to the model. School districts get more, but at this point, we're still under hold harmless, so we'll never get less than what we got in fiscal year 17. Last year, when they divvied out the Tier 2 and the tier funding, it was this spring, and we got about $116,000 extra. So that went right into the education fund.
Can I?
Yep.
All right, you keep bringing up the evidence-based funding monies, and I'm getting lost along the way because you just said it was an extra $116,000, but it's obviously more based on what you were saying.
It's about $6.8 million total.
Okay, so that $6.8 million used to be classified before EB. Was it broken up among the?
It did. It used to be made up of general state aid,
okay,
special ed personnel, special ed extraordinary, special ed summer school, and bilingual TPI. All of those were merged together, now forming the evidence-based funding.
Okay, so then when we apply it to different funds, you get to, whereas the other.
Those all go to the education fund.
But you said special ed transportation, or did I mishear you? Was part of
that one goes to the transportation fund. There's monies for both.
In the
regular ed, special ed.
All in the evidence-based funding monies. So that chunk of money, that $7 million, gets broken up among our operating funds?
As needed. There are no restrictions on how you spend it, except for those 4 categoricals that were merged into it. Otherwise, the administration or board has the ability to use that money as needed into all operating funds as needed.
Not holding you to exact numbers.
That's okay.
Roughly how much of that is discretionary?
All of it. Well, except for the ones, the 4. Hold on one second. So,
Half of it is.
you know what? It used to be about 5.7, so let's call it all except for 1.1.
All right, so about $1 million we get to pick which.
$1 million you don't get to pick. The rest of it you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because it's the little ones that they merged into it that you still have to show that you're spending on special ed, on bilingual, and those other things.
Okay.
But the general state aid money, that's always been discretionary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet. So, okay. The revenue sharing formula was used this year for most of our employee groups, which averaged about 1.8% for salary increases. If you'll recall, the CPI going into this year was 2.1, and this is just slightly lower. So I believe that the revenue sharing formula that we have currently is working very well based on the needs of the district. Fund 21 is our land cash fund. Just like last year, we still don't have enough money to make our debt service payment. So we get interest back from the federal government for our Build America bond. We'll put that right into Fund 31 and use what we have in 21 and then what we get for interest, and we'll be able to make our last debt service payments. I am very excited. The additions for Shields and Stewart will be paid off in February of 2019. So that was a 10-year kind of payment. That was the one that they were debt certificates. They're not funded by property taxes. We had to use any of our other operating monies or land cash impact fee money. And we've been making payments, and it's finally going to be paid off. In 2009, if you'll remember, we had to refund it because it had a balloon payment. We didn't have the money to pay the balloon payment. So that's when we restructured it for 10 years. And so I'm excited it's going to be paid and we're going to have enough money for it.
And I'm going to plead ignorance on this one. You said that the Build America bonds interest we get refunded on. Does that, elaborate please, does that money go away then when the additions are paid off, or are we still going to have that revenue stream?
We'll still have that revenue stream. And prior to that, what I did is I would put it in the bond fund, and then each December when I do the tax levy, we abate the amount of interest that we get, which is what we promised our taxpayers when we sold those bonds.
Okay, so there was a promise made in the past, and that's
Yep.
what we'll do in the future once those are, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
And approximately how much is that interest almost?
About 165,000, because it's about 85,000, 85, 86, and then the federal government has a sequestration, which takes some off. So somewhere in the 80s times 2, we get it twice a year. It's about 160,000. It's not enough that you can hardly see it on your tax bill, but it's the promise that was made. So. We have a bond refunding opportunity in fall of 2019 that's coming right up. We have about $22.5 million that we can refund. If you'll recall, the purpose of refunding your bonds is just like when you restructure your mortgage. We won't stretch it out any further, but we'll pay less on it. Hopefully we'll pay less on it. That's the plan anyway. And so I've already been in contact with Bob Lewis from PMA working on that. Additionally, tomorrow we are doing a bond rating call with Moody's. So he and I have prepped for that, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain our bond rating, especially given that we have a balanced budget. That's going to hopefully make Moody's happy, because we want a good bond rating. The better your credit rating, the better you can sell those bonds for when you refund them. So it's all related to fiscal responsibility.
And that bond rating, we've already sold our bonds, so everything's fixed that we have right now. That'd be if we do the refinance in the future, if the interest rates stay down?
That's right.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And so far, so good. So there is still an opportunity to come out ahead.
Okay.
But you can refund up to 90 days prior to the call date. Our call date is in February. Our plan is to go to market before November, October, November-ish. And then that way of this year.
Okay.
And hopefully we can beat, if they raise rates there at the end of the year, hopefully we'll beat them in the market.
Okay.
We'll see.
So on that slide, is it fall of 2018?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. You're right. That is a typo. It's fall of 2018 because it's coming right up. It's like sneaking up. Yes, it's this fall. Thank you. So, lastly, we are currently negotiating with Speak. That's our support group. And we will be negotiating with KEA during 2018-19. Their contract ends June 30th of 2019. So we do have lots of things to look forward to. That is in your binder, just to remind you, there's a summary section, there's a narrative that follows the calendar. There's a summary section. That summary contains both 17-18 and 18-19 information, revenues, expenditures. I've included all of your bond schedules so that you could see there's a summary page on top and then each bond listed behind it so you can know when debt service payments are coming due. And then there's a blank space for the final budget, which you can add to your binder in September. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on the budget.
I already asked them.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Chris, thank you very much for being my... Yep, I'm good. Thank you. Can you use the white one too and close down the... Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes. Thank you.
All right, so if there's no more questions, then we're looking for a motion that the Board of Education approve the 2018-19 tentative budget for Kaneland Community Unit School District 302 as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? Then roll call.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. LePayton.
All right, motion carries 6-0. And the next item of new business is approval of donation.
Yeah, Dr. Fuchs shared this with us a couple weeks ago. I know that Mr. Goff and their sports boosters have been working on it for a while. So I want to give all of them credit. Thank you for a lot of the work that you guys have done trying to make this a possibility. And for more of the details and the information, I'll let Dr. Fuchs share more of that. And she may have some questions for Mr. Goff too.
Perfect. Thank you. So we have an opportunity. Usually when we get donations, we will accept the donation on the board's behalf and then bring it to you. But this is probably the largest donation that I've experienced since I've been here. And so we have a verbal commitment from an alum, Stephen and Nancy Henriksen, to purchase scoreboards for the newly renovated East Gym. We believe the approximate value of those scoreboards will be about $85,000. So one of the motions tonight is for the Board of Education to accept the donation so that we can move forward on that, because I would not want them to donate that and then have the board say, no thanks, which hopefully you won't. They will be placed again in the East Gym where the new floor and the new bleachers on the lower level are. Mr. Goff has done a lot of the legwork on our behalf for this, along with the sports boosters, and Joel Redmond is in the audience with Ron Shaw tonight, representing the sports boosters. They have identified the size and the features of the scoreboard. One of the features that we're most excited about is the video board. The video board will be able to show players, it will show fun clips, and another thing that it can do is we can put advertisements up there for sponsors. So it will give perhaps the sports boosters and others an opportunity to raise additional revenue. However, we did learn that the board that we want, there's two of them, the boards that we want will require the East Gym to have an electrical upgrade because we don't have enough power for the new boards because of their features. So Because of the electrical requirements, we will need to get a building permit. It's not like you unplug one board and plug one in. That's what we did for the football scoreboard. That's why that worked out so well. This one, it needs to, we need to have 75 amps and 50 amp coverage, and we don't have that available right now. We've gotten quotes for that. Mr. Payton has been involved in that. He's got a quote for that range from $18,000 to $24,000. Because of the needs of the electrical, we'll need that permit from the ROE. Because of that, we need the architect to sign off on it and to plan it. With that being said, I'm planning to ask the architect to help with the bidding process. We tried to convince the attorney that a public bid really wasn't necessary because it is a public donation. However, the board does have a policy, a gift policy, and even gifts need to abide by the procurement policy, which says that anything over $25,000 must go to public bid. So with that being said, we'll have Tim Oliver, our architect, help to develop the bid specs for that. He'll oversee the project, and then, of course, there's a estimated cost for that. The Kaneland Sports Boosters have graciously agreed to cover the costs of both the electrical work that's needed as well as the architect expenditures. Additionally, the administration, we are also recommending that the existing scoreboards that are in that gym be taken down and moved to Meredith. Mark Payton doesn't believe that there will be much cost to that. He's estimating about $2,000. Mr. Goff has stated that that will be a much needed improvement at Meredith, where we do have several high school volleyball and basketball games being hosted at Meredith, so this will help with the scoreboards there. Please note that if the board agrees to the donation and accepts the donation, that the administration does plan to put some form of a nice plaque under each of the new scoreboards that acknowledges the donation by the family with their name on it. So I want that to be clear, that there will be the scoreboard and then some form of donation acknowledgement underneath of it. You regularly would see that around different buildings, so it's not uncommon to do. And I believe that those are all the details that we need to discuss tonight, unless if you have questions. And then there are 2 recommendations on the back of the memo.
I have a silly procedural question. Why do we have to get a permit from the Regional Office of Education?
Sure. So just like when you put an addition on your home, you have to get a permit from the village.
Okay.
The ROE is our regulatory agency, so we are doing major electrical work, and the school code says if you're doing electrical work, you need a building permit. Our building permits come from the ROE.
Oh, so we're not under the county jurisdiction at all, it's just...
The ROE, yeah.
Okay, that explains, that makes sense now.
Yep.
They've got their own goofy system.
All schools are regulated by the ROE. That's why they come in and do the fall inspections.
Right, yeah,
and health, life, safety, and all of those kinds of things.
Okay.
Now, the architecture that you'll be using, is that architectures, or they be using theirs? They have their own?
We'll be using ours, because it's our project. And if you'll recall, we have 2 architects of record, so those are the only 2 that we can choose from. In this example, I've chosen or selected Ruck Pate, primarily because they're already on site in the East Gym for the bleachers and the floor. I'm hopeful that these costs are maximum costs, in the sense that if they're already visiting us for other projects, that they can just tag this one on and it won't be an extra charge. Whereas if you bring in the other architect, they would always have to charge you for the visits and the inspections. So there was a rhyme and a reason why we've selected Ruck Pate in this example. And then with Ruck Pate, because we have 2 architects of record, please remember we do have contracts with them, and that's why the fee is pretty well set. This fee is actually less than what's in the contract. The contract says that they can have up to 8.5% of the total project cost, and this is less than that. After reviewing the project with Mark Payton, Tim Oliver doesn't believe that he'll need as much time as the full 8.5% would require. So he's come in a little bit under that.
In addition, because he's there already?
Yeah, that helps. But it does take time to build the specs, run the ad, come out, do the bid opening with us. He reviews all the contracts with the contractor, just the whole process. He'll earn his money.
So we've haggled with this already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it will be completed before the start of school year.
No, that's not true. There's a 12-week order. I'm glad you asked that question, Gail. Once you all agree to this, then we'll start the bidding process. Once the public bid is accepted by the board, I'm hopeful, by the way, I don't know if we can expedite it fast enough. If we could get it done by the July 30 or 31st board meeting, I can't remember the date. 30th. If the board approves the bid at that time, from the point when we order it, there's 12 weeks to get it in, and then you have to install it. So we're hoping that it'll be done by winter sports. The good news is we have the donation. If the board approves it, we'll get through the process, and it will get here. Please understand that sometimes it just takes time. Because if we miss that July 30th board meeting, our next opportunity is in August, that second week of August, somewhere around the 8th or 9th.
Okay, so what kind of a bearing is that going to have on your classes that are held in that?
Yep. We believe that the installation will take a couple days once the board comes in. I also believe that the electrical work will be able to be done this summer. So we're hopeful that the gym classes, maybe in October it'll still be nice outside, and that they're, just removed from their academic space, the gym space, for just a couple days.
Okay.
Yeah, good questions.
Kind of along the same lines, the gym itself, will it be ready?
The gym floor will be ready, but the bleachers will not by the first day of school.
How far out?
Hopefully just a couple weeks.
And it goes, so again, kind of like the classes in there.
Well, they'll be able to use the floor without the bleachers. But then when they go to install the bleachers again, they'll have to do that, move out for just a little bit.
And how long the estimation for the bleacher installation?
You know what, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to check on that. I don't think I remember. Good question.
And can they be done at the same time, I guess?
Right.
Yeah.
That would be ideal if that would work. We'll have to look at timing on that, because August, September, I don't think that's going to work, because the bleachers will be in well before the scoreboards.
And when does our first event start? Time frame?
Any thoughts?
First event for inside the gym.
Right.
I believe the first game would be 2 weeks after the 8th, so probably that week before, the Monday before we start school. When do we start school?
August 22nd?
Yeah, I think that week before they start. So.
Oh, because of volleyball?
Yes, I think we've already talked, and I've talked to Coach Violet, is that they might have to do maybe the first couple games or something in the, at Merida, and move the freshmen to the West Gym. So it's an easy fix.
Okay.
In actuality, if the floor's done, they could use the East Gym, because they could use the bleachers upstairs.
Yeah.
So, I hate to pass the buck.
But you're passing it.
On the electrical, is that going to be bidded out, or do we just contact people?
Because it's under 25,000,
Correct.
we won't bid it. We'll just use that low bid or low quote of the 18,000.
So we're using people we know, or?
Yes, we'll use, the 3 quotes came from contractors that have done work for us before. So yes.
And was that like a closed bid as well, or just kind of just?
No, they were just quotes. They came, looked at it, and made up, wrote up the quotes accordingly.
And those are pretty much on the dot usually, the range?
Yes, and I've heard that it could be less than 18,000, because I believe the quotes might have been for 100 amps, and we're only going to need 75 and 50. So that's probably a little bit higher than what it hopefully will come out to be. So.
Any ballpark range less?
16,000? Not less, but
Couple thousand.
a couple thousand less. Yeah, maybe. hard to say.
Okay.
Do we have any pictures yet of what the floor is going to look like? I mean,
I've seen some tear down pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen tear down pictures, yes, but.
I do have pictures. Actually, Mr. Payton and I were talking about that today. We have some from the architect that sent it, and I can look for it tomorrow and then try to send that to Dr. Layton or Dr. Fuchs, and they can pass out. It looks sharp,
Okay.
black and white, and like a tone, different kind of stain. If you saw the NCAA tournament, it's going to kind of look like that. That's where we got our vision.
Okay.
It'll be something different than anyone that has around here.
Everybody will want one.
That'd be all right.
The transition from the current gym to the Meredith gym of the scoreboards, would that require any type of electrical? Is it plug and go?
I believe it's plug and go, but there must be some cost because of the $2,000, because our guys are doing it. I did ask Mr. Payton that, but I don't know what those $2,000 represent. Do you have any idea?
They could be, the scoreboards that we have in the East Gym could be a little bit bigger, so it might be.
Different brackets?
Some brackets in here.
Yeah.
So I know the one with the player fouls and all that's a little bit bigger. So that'll go on it'll be the east wall. It's going to have nice scoreboards in there, so be very well taken care of.
I know we have to talk logistics and all this type of stuff, but kudos to everybody who worked on getting, the donation. I'm sure you worked on the project and everything. I mean, it's pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
Real awesome.
Mr. Henriksen was very, very generous. He goes, before I get in any, let me talk to my wife. I totally understand. I get that all the time. I called and talked to him today, so he was waiting to hear my call tomorrow.
Awesome.
And kudos to you, Peter, for following up on this. You could have basically closed the door and said that's your guys' problem, but thank you for following up on all this. But
Well, when you have these two pit bulls on the wall.
Glad we're here.
That's right.
Concur with that?
You see us chasing them through the hallway?
I know why.
So actually, you guys have my fate in your hands.
How much do you guys want to do?
So here's a question to potentially go out. Is it possible to have a meeting before our meeting to get this faster and therefore get it in there as quicker as possible, get the ball rolling as opposed to our whatever meeting we have left in June, July, whatever that is?
It would depend on if we can expedite the bidding process. So once that is out there, we'll keep that updated and then we'll let you know. Because once we get that process set.
Yeah, and I'll know very soon, because as soon as the bid opening date, we can have the board meeting the day after. As long as everything comes in as planned and there are no quirks, we can have the board. And truly, you would only need four members available to have something like that.
Generally, how long from approval to completion of board specs or bid specs does that take?
You know what, I'm hoping that Tim can have them done maybe by the end of the week or early next week. Okay. So we know that it needs to be done. So we'll move.
When we got the new football scoreboards, we spent a bunch of time discussing ad revenue. Did there ever turn out to be any ad revenue?
Yeah. So what we did is there, at the bottom of it, there are places for 3 signs.
Mm-hmm.
Each year, we split the revenue for that. The sports boosters get a portion. The Kaneland Foundation gets a portion. And the performing arts boosters get a portion. And we each charge our person or our company $750 to continue to advertise on the 3 signs that hang below that scoreboard.
All right. So this new video board will have all kinds of opportunities. Is the same plan in place going forward, or what's going to happen with the advertising revenue from this generous donation?
Mm-hmm. We believe that the sports boosters will get most of that revenue. However, we are working through some procedures, and they're not in writing yet, where we'll be able to have other opportunities for other groups to add or advertise on there as well. That all has to be worked out yet. Mrs. Maris and I met with the Performing Arts Boosters and the Kaneland Arts Initiatives today, not about the scoreboard, but about opportunities for their advertising. So we're working through some of the logistics of the revenue for that. But right now, where the sports boosters are going to put in over $20,000, we believe that they'll get the majority of the ad revenue. And then if other groups are allowed and work through those processes where they sell ads, we're thinking that a portion of that money will go to the boosters, sports boosters as well. But again, the fine details are not in writing and not determined at this time, but we are working on them.
Is our goal to get those details done prior to that board being finished and therefore everybody accepted understanding?
Yes, yes. And we want it to be as fair as possible for all groups.
True, understand. I mean, it seems like all the legwork has been done up to
sports boosters
and such. But yes, I agree. As far as the funds, all general, the funds itself would go through those potentially those three groups, or would some of it come into like the general funds as well and such? How does that? Do you plan on that?
Yep, I don't anticipate any of it coming into district monies. If anything, say for example, if Mr. Rollman goes and sells an ad on behalf of the athletic department, I could see that money going into the athletic department's activity fund, because it's fundraising money, kind of, the selling of advertisements. So I am not budgeting and or anticipating at this time any money coming into the district.
Okay.
So perhaps the foundation would get some if we decide that we have a person that wants to go sell ads, but then again, a portion of that money would probably go back to the sports boosters.
I hope the details will be appropriately detailed, if you will, and whether you don't have or if we have a, sergeant handling all this and such.
We're going to do our very best to make it fair.
I also think we shouldn't have I don't know, an advertising policy that has specifics for each room, or for each, we kind of need to have a general advertising, I just don't think the policies should get.
No, I wasn't suggesting we change them.
I said anything about what you're suggesting.
Yeah, these are going to be administrative procedures. The policy is actually in the press tonight, and you'll be able to review that. Okay. But what I'm talking about, the details, those are actually procedures, not policies. Your policy is in here, and you can review that. Dr. Layton's going to go over that in just a little bit.
We're going to make sure that the procedures that we create are consistent and fair. We just want to make sure that they're consistently applied.
And consistent with the policy.
Yes.
Okay. They'll all follow the policy.
Okay. And then just another question that popped into my head because of something you said. Is it customary for the athletic director to sell ads?
You know what?
That just seems like he's a busy guy. I don't know. I mean, maybe if somebody says to him, maybe somebody comes to him because he's the athletic director, but
he's not going to be going door to door.
Yeah.
No, he's not going up and down 47 in Alberta anywhere. No.
Just, I didn't want the new guy to feel like he had to go out.
Right.
And sell pizza ads.
No.
Maybe a
was a bad example. How's that? But an example. Yeah. Because we sell ads on behalf of the foundation. So sometimes yes, but not common.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, then I think we have two recommendations tonight. So the first one would be that the Board of Education accept the donation of 2 scoreboards in the amount of approximately $85,000 to be placed in the East Gym at Kaneland High School from Steve and Nancy Henriksen.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and then I think any discussion just on that first motion?
Grateful.
Thank you.
Express our thanks.
Very much.
We'll do it.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
And Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. And the second motion is that the Board of Education direct the administration to coordinate the electrical work and installation of the 2 new scoreboards for the East Gym for Kaneland High School.
So moved.
Second.
And any discussion on that motion? And roll call, please.
Mrs. Farber?
Aye.
Mrs. Witt? Aye. Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. LePayton?
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can leave now?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
All right, so the next item of business is approval of additional .28 FTE certified staff at Kaneland Blackberry Creek Elementary School and related employment recommendation.
Yep, as you know, in March, we bring the staffing plan, and then from there, we continue to monitor numbers throughout the district, whether it's, you'll see a little bit later on J7 for IEP related. This one is not IEP related, but it's still a need for additional FTE. So I'll let Chris kind of Mr. Atkins go through a few of those details. Mr. Atkins?
Good evening. So as we do monitor our enrollments and our scheduling and our sectioning, we had a resignation at Blackberry. We had a teacher who taught .22 FTE of PE. This was great for us. It was a teacher that was full-time in years past, and then as she started a family, has decreased from part-time to even lesser part-time, and would come in and teach a section here, a section there. However, with the resignation, we need to have those section needs met. Under the law, we have to recall anyone who is certified for those positions. We have a teacher who had been RIF'd, back in March, who we were able to bring back due to some changes in staffing, and then is still short of full-time though, and they're short of full-time by .2, with a .22 person leaving. This teacher is entitled for that to become full, to be made whole, but because that person is already scheduled at other buildings, in order to make the scheduling and the sectioning work, we do need to increase that allotment. So as you can see in the memo, if you'd follow for just a moment, that teacher was slated next year to teach half-time at KST and .3 at the high school, .3 health. With this opportunity to make him whole, he would be teaching .5 at KST still and .5 at KBK, and we can work out that scheduling with those sections. The .3 that he then left at the high school, we have another teacher who was reduced from full-time to part-time status, who is also under recall entitled to that .3 because they're certified to teach health, and they would then be increased from .3 to .6, which would be their .3 foods and the .3 health. So we're bound by recall, we're bound by sectioning, but it is something that's rare and unique, so we needed to bring it forward. It does require the additional .28 FTE, and that's why we're here in front of the board today. So a little bit of a trail there, not your typical recommendation that you'd find in the consent agenda, but because of the uniqueness of it, we want to make sure we explain it.
Any questions?
So basically, the only thing we're adding is a point to it.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, then the recommendation is for the administration. The administration recommends that the Board of Education approve the additional increase of .28 FTE certified staff at Kaneland Blackberry Creek and the related employment recommendation.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. LePayton?
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Farber?
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. All right, so we'll move on to J5, approval of policies from press, first reading.
Yep, quarterly we review our press policies. As you see, a number of them across the top have 5-year review, needs a review. Primarily those are reviewed and there may be a couple questions within the policies, but a number of them are just changed for references and any other legal updates. So what I'll do is I'll go through those. I'll go through each of them. I'll tell you which, if there's any decisions need to be made, and then answer any questions that you have.
Before you start,
Yes.
I claim ignorance on this. I sat down and, like before when we got the old format, they told you what you changed and you can look at it and see what the difference is. I have no idea what changed in this document, and I didn't have time to pull an old document to correlate. So I don't like this format, and I'm hoping there's something that you can provide in the future when we do this so that we know what's changing instead of having to scan and compare an old document versus a new that we don't have easy access to.
And I'll agree, that's some feedback that the IASA and IASB has received, because you're right, if you don't have the color copy and you don't have the access to the Press Plus One, it is harder to tell. So
Thank you.
I'll see what we can do to try to make it more clear.
Thank you.
Yep. The first one, as you can see at the top, is just a review. The policy is unchanged. There is the inclusion on the back is for the Grant Transparency Act, the new Grant Accountability Transparency Act that was enacted about 2 years ago, and this includes that new act. I'm sorry, first one, 2105, the Ethics and Gift Ban.
Thank you.
Yeah, on the first page where it says Press Plus One, do you guys get a color copy?
No, not when I get the printout.
Okay, because that may help, but I'll try to make sure that you guys each get a color copy, because where you see Press Plus One, the middle, 2/3 of the way down, that comes in blue, and then there's a couple other highlights that are either blue or red that will show other highlights. So that may help.
Oh, well,
with a color copy.
I'm sorry, that didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't understand what Press Plus One meant. It's not.
Yeah,
So
Press
that's
Plus
the
One
change?
Press Plus One is just the first comment, and then on the last page, the Press Plus One is the comment that corresponds with it. Or if there's a Press Plus, if there's a Press Plus question 1, then on the very last page, you'll see another question.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that would be helpful if.
Was color-coded?
Because like I said, I sat down and tried to read this a couple times and just gave up, so.
And that's the feedback they've received from a number of people, including us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, or more of a red line version would be much easier.
Yep.
The comments that were out on the side used to be easy to follow.
Right.
All right. Beth and I will work on that. 2170. Those are 3 legal updates. So there's nothing new or different for us to do. Fund balance, that's a review. Dr. Fuchs talked about that earlier. There is nothing in color to note on this. It's just a 5-year review.
Question about this.
Yes.
We set our own, I guess, just curiosity. We have a 45-day policy on the fund balance. Does that come from this document, or does that come from somewhere else? Because I know in the past, before I was on the board, it changed. So are we adopting a statewide policy, or where?
These are our policies. So if you look up press policies that go out to the different districts, they review it for a number of districts who pay the fee, and then they get these updates. So this one is our policy, hand-selected for us.
Are we still good on that 45-day policy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. We did have a question, but because of the way it worked out this year, we're fine.
Okay.
Accounting and audits, that's also updated for the Grant Accountability Transparency Act. And then a couple other legal changes. 140, student fees and waiver. We updated for legal practices, and we follow all of these, whether it's for activities, lunches, field trips, all of those that they cite in there, we follow. Educational 610, educational philosophy and objectives. That is just a 5-year review. There's nothing different in that one. Organization of instruction. 3 legal changes are updated. So there's nothing as far as language or anything that's expected for us to do different. Curriculum content 660. It's the first one where you'll see in the front, under number 1, you'll see the underlined piece, and it says Press Plus One. There is a question that we do have at the end that we can answer, and our recommendation, because in it, the policy has changed, state policy, state law has changed back to cursive instruction for a unit during the elementary years. And so what they're asking for to adopt as it is, or if we want to explicitly go in and say what grade we want to do it in, our recommendation is to not state anything in policy as far as the grade. We want to have that flexibility if it changes year to year. If we want to do 2 units, we want to do something different. Policy is to make sure that we do it. How we do it would be more of a procedure.
So this goes back to the state assembly that decided they should pass a law that says you have to teach cursive?
Yes.
All right. So when we say that we're going to teach a unit, does that make them fluent in cursive writing, or are we a wink and a nod to teach them that?
We will not be fluent in cursive writing. Our unit that we've had and practiced is more of an overview, a little bit of practice, but it's more exposure than it is explicit instruction currently.
That and the gym mandatory hours of gym time, I hate it when we have these policies that we purposely don't plan on enforcing.
But what they say is unit, and what they've been very clear to share in here, that a unit is district related. That's why they used unit, that's why they didn't say 3 weeks, that's why they didn't say a full year.
But the intent of the law as passed was to teach the kids to write in cursive.
I called the ROE, I don't mean to be argumentative, but
please.
I called the ROE on this and I said, D, what is expected or understood in this? She said, do whatever you want to do. It is completely up to the district. That's why they left the language like that, so it could be passed, but you cannot tell us what to do. So they can say there's a mandate, but there's not a instructional practice piece of it that is attached. So
can we just take the whole thing out so we don't have another policy that's pointless?
We're required to have the policy.
And we are doing it, right? We're teaching a unit of cursive.
Yes.
You're just saying it's pointless.
I see a bit of absurdity. Yes, we did it, but they can't write in cursive when they're done, so what's the point? That I guess that's my opinion, but.
And what's the point of the state mandating that we teach cursive?
Right. Well, or if they do, then I guess maybe it's just me, and I'm not trying to disparage anyone. It seems like we have these policies, but we know we're not going to follow them, but we still pass them. And I don't see the point. If we're not going to, when the law was passed, it was my understanding kids were supposed to learn cursive. I realize that it gets lost in translation, it comes down here, but why do we pass these policies as a board when we know that they're just meaningless pieces of paper?
Well, I think there's a difference in interpretation. I mean, we have to have a policy. We are complying with the policy. It's not like we have no intention. I don't like the idea of saying we have no intention of following it. We are going to follow it to the legal extent, that we need to, plus, based on recommendations from curriculum directors and those in the district, that.
Maybe my phrasing was wrong. I didn't mean it to come off that way. And that's fine. I mean, we can disagree.
No, I just that's a little bit at, we have no intent of following it. We absolutely do.
Well, but we're not. But we're not teaching them cursive. They can't write when they're done. So I disagree with you that. So we showed it to them. They still can't do it. I don't see the point.
I guess I would say if the state legislature truly cared that there was an outcome, they could have written the legislation much more clearly and much more explicitly, and then we would have been held accountable. The state legislature made a decision to write something in very obscure language, and by virtue of that, each district has flexibility in how they choose to implement that. So I think we are responding in exactly the spirit in which our state legislature took action, which is we will wave the magic wand over here that declares cursive instruction shall occur, and we shall provide cursive instruction. And no one is tying anything to an outcome. If the state had the right, as the legislature, to say something more, they chose not to. So we're being compliant.
Fair enough. I guess it's not just this one. We run into these.
There's a couple of them.
But you raise a good point, Peter. Thank you.
I do have a weird question about the cursive thing, though. 10 years from now, how are these kids going to sign their signatures? Are they going to just print them?
They'll all be e-signature.
Wow.
Yeah, right now. Now, this used to be part of the curriculum, right? 10 years back and such, and they stripped it? Where you taught cursive and such?
Yeah, I don't know at what point.
My kids got
Dr. wasn't
affected.
there. Yeah, we had the 3-line paper and you had to write A a bunch of times, B, but yeah, we all did that. I can't remember when it was taken out, but the person, the legislator who brought it back in, wanted it in, had some adversarial conversations. Other people said they weren't going to pass it if it was too explicit, so they watered it down to the point so they could be approved without the direction on it. So it was the very intent to make sure that this person got it in without strings attached because they wanted it in. Knowing strings were attached, then it could have gotten, that most likely would not have been approved.
Which I guess leads me to a question. Do we as a board have an opinion as to whether our students learn how to write cursive or not?
That's a much better question.
There you go.
That's a legitimate question.
Because I know it's been brought to the board a couple of years ago, the cursive people coming in trying to push it through him, but obviously it wasn't coming through the top. So do we do this presently right now? Or we're about to, Todd?
Right now, we currently have practiced, not a full immersion, but more of an overview and understanding of what it is, some practice, but it's nothing explicit and it's nothing that takes a lot of time right now.
And do we do it at a certain grade, or are we exploring to see where it'd be more effective?
Between grades 2 and 3. Traditionally, it's a third grade activity, but it's done right now between grades 2 and 3. Somewhere end of second, beginning of third is our current practice.
And then back to the question that was asked between Peter and Ryan.
It's a good question.
Is that something that we can transition back in there?
That could be a topic for a future agenda.
What it does say in here is that the superintendent will provide feedback on what the district would do at the board's request. So it does say in here that based on the community, based on the local community expectations, direct him or her to determine the appropriate grade levels in which it will be offered. So we can talk about the grade level and to the degree of how it's taught later.
All right, so if I'm reading the room wrong, or I don't think I am, I think we have a topic for future agenda. But no? Okay.
Here we do.
I think it's an interesting question, but I don't know that I don't know that it's a board conversation.
Yeah, I'd rather leave it to to educators and administrators who know
Yeah,
what
but
the trends are, what the need is. I wouldn't have the expertise to do that.
Well, the trend was, it got, I know Teresa, you can associate with this, because it got taken out of there, right as soon as our children went through like 3rd and 4th grade. And then after that, they didn't have it. But it used to be in there, more, carried on through and such. And I know the thought, and I questioned it at the time when I was stripping it. It's like, are you kidding me? And the thought process was, by the time these children get up to this age, which is high college for our kids now, they would have been all electronic and stuff, and that didn't happen. So now we're so far behind. I got students.
All right, so to get us back on track, since I'm the one that pulled us off, if we pass this policy as the way it is written, we still have the opportunity to debate in the future whether we want our children to be completely able to write in cursive or not?
Yes.
Thank you.
And we're talking about something more than just their signature.
I was trying to get us back to the policy.
That's what we can talk about, yes.
Okay.
So as long as we still have that flexibility,
we have that
fine,
last
and thank you.
Yep.
So at this point, there's no question about a topic for future.
Well, we haven't gotten
we
haven't gotten to that one.
Okay.
I was just trying to move along.
Thank you for that. The next one is a 5-year review. No. 6-120, Education of Children with Disabilities. A couple legal references because of some court cases, but we're compliant and we will do everything in there. Extracurricular and curricular and co-curricular activities. Legal reference updates down at the bottom. The 105 and the 524 were both updated. Library media program. Again, that one's fine. There's an administrative code change that we abide by.
So which number are you on?
I'm sorry. Next one that was 6230.
Sorry.
No, they're each one page. The last 3 are about 1 page long.
Got it. Okay.
That's right. You guys are front to back. Okay.
Thank you.
6240 is field trips. There is an update there, and the update's at the end of the middle the middle paragraph. They just talked about the waiver shall apply, and they just pulled out the words free and reduced lunch. But it's in our policy. Next one starts at 6250, community resource persons and volunteers. There's a number of legal changes in there, and press +1, which is under number 4, the use of volunteers is okay. So what they're talking about is if there's a school crisis, that there are volunteers that either come from Lighthouse or anywhere outside of our district, that we can use them in these types of cases, these types of emergencies.
Had that been not allowed before, it was just silent on that issue, and you're acknowledging that volunteers can be part of that process?
It was silent, and now they're, because of the publicity of the number of them, they're trying to make sure that those needs are accounted for, so they want to make sure it was explicit that that they wouldn't not go out and get the services because fear of what the law may say. Now they know that we can, or now we know that we can. Yep.
And for excuse me, I just wanted to mention volunteers are covered under the board's insurance policy. So at any point that we bring in a volunteer, they're covered under our insurance. So, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you for the clarification. 750, school admissions and student transfers to and from non-district schools. The biggest changes here under press +2, as I talked with Maureen Lemon, she said that the way that's currently written is what she would recommend, continue our current practice. And we do have an academic screener and we have a behavioral screener. And we do, as I talked with Dr. Mum about this, we have anywhere from 15 to 25 recommendations for early entrance, and we admit anywhere from 3 to 7 per year for early entrance based on the screeners that we have set up. And this allows us to continue to do that and be in compliance with the code. 7330. Student use of buildings and equal access. This is just reminding districts to take it on a case-by-case basis, and that even if students are part of a group that's not a school-sanctioned group, they have, under number 2, substantially the same treatment. So they should receive substantially the same treatment, which would be the same facilities, the same length of time. They would get any supplies, materials that what an equal group that's already acknowledged by the district would receive.
I had a question about this one because it specifically says student groups, which sports teams could be considered student groups, unless I'm reading the definition wrong, are granted free use of the school premises. Don't we charge rent for the boost, all the basketball and whatever programs that come through the Meredith building?
Those are only for like if our high school groups use it,
Or
they do not get charged. But if a community group uses it, they get charged. So it's an outside user fee. These are for
like
students.
What's my daughter? Shooting Stars?
Silver Stars?
Silver Stars, thank you.
That's a feeder program.
But that's a student group. Or is that where the definition is because it's...
It's not a school student group. Their sponsor is not a school employee.
Is that like number 10, where it's like the school staff person is around instead of another adult?
Well,
Yes.
they would supervise it, but it's a internal group of our students. So the Shooting Stars could be somebody from Kaneland, and they could do a travel program from other programs, but that's an outside group, not an inside group of our students. Like our example that we thought of as I reviewed this would be baccalaureate. We don't have a baccalaureate team or a baccalaureate activity, but it's a group of our students asking to use the facilities, and they are granted the facilities as our other groups would do, other sports or activities.
Except I think you'd run into some religious issues there, wouldn't you?
Or isn't that
Because I thought the advisement on baccalaureate was that it can't be held at the school, and the school can't sponsor, it can't make announcements or provide any part of it.
Well, what we did this year, we did allow it, well, each of the last 2 years we've allowed it, that I recall, that we've had this discussion. We've had baccalaureate on campus, it's student-led, there is adult supervision, but our adult supervision of staff can't participate. They are there to supervise it, and it's a student-led program.
And so it's not,
I think
because a few years ago, there were some issues about it becoming rather explicitly of a particular religious bent, and there were concerns expressed. So is that no longer the case of the baccalaureate program?
I didn't attend this year, but I think, if I recall, I think our issue was the concern of the district was the advertising piece of it, not necessarily the content when they were in there. So I would have to look more into that, because I know as we advertised, we brought that back and we still hosted it, but we didn't do the advertising piece through the backpack.
So it doesn't look like it's through the auspices of the school.
Right.
Okay.
Additionally, we do not rent out the auditorium to any outside groups. So baccalaureate was moved to the East Gym because the East Gym is something that we would rent to any group, and therefore they were allowed to use that facility.
Thank you.
And the difference then is, if it's a student group, if students can create religious groups, the school just can't run a religious program. So the school can't run baccalaureate, but like you're saying, it's been run by a student.
The student
by
led.
student groups.
But then there does need to be a faculty person there supervising.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's, you know.
So I guess where I'm still lost is that Silver Stars is a club team, and it says in the first sentence, student groups or clubs that are not school-sponsored, and Silver Stars isn't sponsored by the school, are granted free use of the premises. So I must be missing a definition somewhere.
Isn't it a pay-to-play or something, though?
It's a club, they refer to it as a club team.
What I can do is I can clarify the language, but the intent is for the existing students that want to host something, not an outside club coming in, because baccalaureate would be our students hosting something for themselves. If our students wanted to start an intramural club, that would be something more in line with a basketball club, whereas Silver Stars or the Kaneland Youth Football or Kaneland Youth Soccer is an outside group that rents it.
Okay, so that's the definition that seems to be missing, internal versus external, an internal group of students.
Okay.
I guess that's where I'm getting lost, because otherwise it seems like you could apply that to.
I can see if there's a clarification.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
A student group, not a group of students.
There you go.
And I think that's really
Right
the
there.
distinction. Because if that group could be students from anywhere.
In district or
any
somewhere.
district.
Yeah, including
Yeah, I guess
including
that
ours.
that would clean it up.
Yeah.
Student records, under Press Plus one of the changes that we've had that we do offer, if you look in the middle of page 2, there is a question that says, if the board has adopted the additional sentence, yes, we have. And that sentence is, if our junior students who are taking the SAT, if they want, they can include the colleges or universities that they want their scores to go to. So this policy is just clarifying that we do want to offer that, and our students are allowed to take the SAT through the state, and we want to continue to offer them the right to have those scores sent somewhere. And it's at their request. We don't do it on our own. They sign off on it and request it.
Or is this saying you'll put it on their transcript, not just?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes, they'll go on their transcript and it can get sent there. So this is allowing them to do that.
And for some students, it gives them a free ability to
Yes.
report the score, right?
Then the last one's our advertising policy. That was a 5-year review, and the only thing they highlighted was the 1993 Lamb's Chapel famous court case that we talk about in the law class. And then
And this has nothing to do with selling advertising on scoreboards in any part of our campuses.
There is, in the middle, the commercial companies or political candidates, it does show what our internal groups, the steps that our internal groups do need to go through.
But not
to
how
get
we
permission.
divvy up our dollars. Okay.
Correct, correct.
Thank you.
It's not clarifying it to that degree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for those. I'll get some feedback back to you, maybe talk with Maureen on some language change, clarification for our benefit for 7-330. Then I think I'll probably maybe hear a little bit more about cursive when we get to another topic on the agenda.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.
And we do need a motion to approve on first reading.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the recommended policy changes on first reading. Do I need to read all of these? Or is that enough?
No, you don't need to.
All right. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
In a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Any more discussion? So we'll move to a roll call.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Mrs. Havlick.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. So now we'll move on to the discussion of inclusion of activity club reports at board meetings.
Can I, before you get going, the board member that, if I remember correctly, that wanted to discuss this is absent, so.
No, it was Pedro.
That would be me.
Oh, I thought it was Aaron. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. No,
I was gonna suggest tabling it till Aaron was here, but if it wasn't Aaron's topic, then go ahead.
Okay. We, as topics for future agenda in January, Mr. Rivas shared kind of a philosophical overview and idea of having our activity groups maybe come to board meetings in some way, shape, or form and share a little bit about their mission, what they do, their activities, and what their activity looks like. And I think part of the conversation was sports, we kind of see, we kind of know, it's a little more prevalent, and so I think the idea was to try to highlight other activity groups, and so I listed the activity groups on the memo for you, and wanted to allow whatever discussion we needed to have. There's not a recommendation, so we don't need to finalize anything today, but we can have some conversation, I can get some feedback, and then from there, we can just determine what our next steps will be.
We actually have a ukulele club.
Excuse me?
We have a ukulele club, she said?
Yeah, that was one of my comments. I don't think this list is all put together. There's some other pieces that I've got to be missing. But anyway, aside from that, if I may add also, Todd, and what you said, good synopsis of it. One of the other things that I wanted to focus on this idea, if you will, was not necessarily the sports teams, but obviously those that went to state and all this other stuff. Those are the ones that come here. But yet, there's the other groups that are still add to the value of school and such, and therefore I wanted to give them an opportunity, or suggest to give an opportunity for them to be able to come here and show their stuff, if you will. And I come from the background of this could be an opportunity from the board's perspective, or from my perspective of the board taking the opportunity of, we talked about college, career, and career ready, and such, community career ready, an opportunity for them to do that 8-minute, 10-minute, whatever the allotment may be, for them to present themselves, and then therefore kind of help them in that respect. And yet, we know more about all the other things that ukulele clubs that are out there as well. That's where my perspective was, other than, just, I guess, walk the talk, in my view.
I guess one of the problems is
time.
We know, okay, so tonight Jill said, well, the activities are, pretty much done, school's over, and so basically nobody responded. We do give them the same opportunities as the sports to report, but we don't ever get a report about the activities because I'm not exactly sure if it's the activities directors that are not responding.
Is that just because
we did say we want it equal. We don't want to just hear about sports. But we don't ever hear about the activities.
Well, no,
there's always some reason that we don't.
We've had updates.
FFA. We hear about FFA.
And Carrie
Oslager.
Yeah. Oslager has presented little bits about what some of the activity groups have done as part of those updates. So she's spoken a couple times. I think, if you look at, it's a really long list of activity groups. I agree that trying to give them a little more visibility to the board would be a nice thing and give them an opportunity. I wonder whether a gallery walk of clubs and activities might be something. I don't know whether.
I like that.
I don't know whether that as a mechanism might work, but because I think you can never get all these groups to come because we don't have a meeting every week to let them all get their 5 or 10 minutes to talk. But if there were a way to let them talk about their programs in a community meeting or before a board meeting or something once a year maybe, I don't know whether that would, I don't know how well that would address your interest in their visibility and exposure.
I guess my question is, take for example, jazz band. We don't necessarily do you want them here to come play a song for us, or?
That was another thing. We got a whole bunch of bands here. Let's put them together. If that was the case. But anyway, yes.
I guess that's what I'm getting at is, do you want all these bands to come perform, or are you looking for the Bass Fishing Club to come tell us what they do? I guess I'm trying to get to where you're trying to go with this.
Well, take the bass fishing.
Fine.
Okay. I know that they go bass fish, but what are they getting out of it? I mean, what are they? I mean, I know they go to competitions as well, but I mean, I in general terms, I say, well, they go take a pole and they go fish, but I know there's more to it than that, a lot more than that. I don't recall which, and I don't know if it's on here. There's a group of students that are always trying, they go around the school to try to express positive. I forget which one it is here, and I don't know which one it really is.
It's probably now Operation Snowball.
Mm-hmm. Is that what that is?
That's what it's become, because POTA, I think, has become Operation Snowball now, I believe.
I think that's, as an example, that's just an optimal one to kind of, the positive that they for them to come in here and present, give a 5-10 minutes, whatever we potentially allow for them to do, and maybe the representatives that come in here.
So,
we talked about the administration coming in and talk. I prefer to hear from them, personally.
But I guess my point is, help me figure out what it is you want to hear so we can narrow it down to what we want to do, because no offense to the color guard, but I can see them at a basketball game. I don't need to see them here.
And that's, I think this list, I mean,
that didn't
first of all, it's not complete, and some of them was like, really? But, I mean, for instance, we have the freshman class, the junior class, the senior class.
Okay, but you didn't answer my question, sir.
Yes.
What do you want to get out of this? What's your goal?
Do they have like an existing, I don't want to say bylaw, but something that what their goal is as a group? Do all of these have a goal that they want to go?
When they form, they have a series of questions of what are your objectives, what are your goals, those kind of things. So there is something that is on the paperwork, on the activity sheet that they would fill out when they, at least there is now moving forward. I don't know what was existing when some of these were probably formed over the years.
That's the starting point. That's where I was going with that. That's the starting point. Because they all have, to be existing, I know there's a 2-year thing and all this other stuff, but there's something, they just kind of just go form, let's go fishing. There's things that are there, and I don't know, I just looking at opportunities to let other students shine, and except for those that, like for tonight, they're all those that reached the top or close to the top, but the other ones, in like the snowball one, to me, that's a very important group. Not to mention, there's many of them in here as well. I don't know, just my idea. Just thought I'd
I almost think it would have to be voluntary, because sometimes we can't even get people who win awards to come. And so I don't know, I mean, I don't know that you could require anybody, so I don't. But I do think it's hard because the activities are so many different types of groups. Like I look on here and I see some that I think presentations from some of these groups could be, we would benefit from for example, the Latin American Student Organization. They could, you know, talk about their feelings on diversity and how, you know, how they feel the district is going. The Gay Straight Alliance, they could talk about, you know, inclusion and diversity as well.
Or I have no idea what DECA is. DECA is, am I just blanking?
It's a business. They actually do competitions and they win or not.
They make products every 2 years, right? And they sell them? Is that the one?
No, that's
That's more the entrepreneurial.
Oh,
So it's like
I know the group that does that.
Like junior achievement.
DECA is a very structured program, at least it used to be. I don't hear much about it anymore, but it's very structured, and those are kids who are interested in business and marketing and things like that, and there's a whole structure of state programs out there that they participate in and things like that.
Similar-
Conferences
like-
and competition.
Like junior achievement used to be
Probably.
back to
That's what I
my,
was trying to think of, Junior
Okay.
Achievement. Yeah, that's the one that makes the product.
okay. So I guess in this list of things, I see groups that get exposure by default because they're the jazz band and they play in front of other people. And I see groups that, DECA is one that I didn't even know what it meant. So would we be better off inviting a list of some?
I mean, obviously, now you talk about time. We don't have enough time to get all these groups in here, right? Whether it's just
Right.
one at a time or two at a time, whatever.
We can
Limitation
invite
of
3 or
time.
4 and see how many respond, and if they don't want to come,
Well, I mean, this list was put by Jill, right? And at one time I thought that you had talked about the middle school people as well, and then I just saw just from Jill. So however you guys.
I just put
got
high
to
school
this
down.
list.
We can include
Right.
whoever or not.
Right, whatever, and we just gave you the idea and you ran with it and such.
Is this something that just needs to be maybe advertised to the communities, or that there are these types of clubs or whatnot? I mean, some kids probably have or parents specifically probably have absolutely no idea that some of these things even exist.
There are a number of it's in the handouts, it's on our website, the clubs, and then they're highlighted at freshman orientation and a number of activities throughout the year. But as far as all of our parents knowing all of these, there's no way that they're going to know them all or be familiar.
So is your goal to get us as a board more familiar with what goes on in the school, or is it to get
expose some of these, or give these students the opportunity to come here and present
so that
what they are? Yeah, they're going to obviously enlighten us in some respect. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, college, community, and career ready. Some of those flavors will be added to that while they present, whether there's one spokesperson and they present their peoples, if you will. Speech comes into play, presentation, the timeliness. I mean, I can just keep on naming them.
I'm just trying to get somewhere. So if we as a board extended an invitation to these people and then we could schedule as needed, I mean, I doubt if the freshman class responds that they want to come talk to the board about what they've been doing lately, but it might get the ball rolling that we can expose.
What we could do is we could sit down, I could have Mike Rice talk with Carrie and Jill, and we could look at some of these clubs if the board would like. There's a number of different ways we could highlight them, but if we want it to be at the board level, we could maybe tell them they have like a speech, 3 minutes each. We'll invite the first 2 because there's roughly 20 board meetings during a school year. If there's 25 clubs or 40 clubs, we'll just divide it up and say the art club and bass fishing, you guys come August 10th. The next 2 that we would not be familiar with or we would not know about, we could invite 2 to the next one. We could try to have them do it as part of salutes. That way we wouldn't have to amend an agenda or change the agenda protocols that we've agreed on. We could do something like that. If we don't do that, we could put them in the KCN. We could highlight them in a number of different ways.
I said, are we getting to where you wanted to go?
Yeah, I think he's rolling with it. He's got the idea. Yeah, I mean, and some of these, I'm assuming, are season-wise, where they kind of, it's not the appropriate time for them because it's a busy time type of thing. Others, we just finished, so therefore let's come and report type of thing.
Right.
So.
And we'll try
there's
to
a
make
whole
it,
bunch of.
we'd make probably during the board meetings during the school year, because in the summer, he's the 2 or 3 meetings in the summer, it's tough to get students to
So
come
should
out
maybe-
and staff to come out.
Should maybe the activity salute not be the same night as sports? I don't know how many of those people duplicate and are happy that it's the same night, but, and then maybe it's up to like Carrie and maybe a middle school arm to group them together. Because I know at least for my kids, you know, I want them to tell me a lot more than they're interested in, and the same thing for the board. I'd love to hear kids talk. My kids aren't coming here. When they're invited, they don't come.
Right.
They're not really interested in talking to the board. If we can find some that are, I think that's awesome, but I almost wonder if we invite 2 at a time.
But honestly, I would like Todd
half,
say,
and then invite-
like Todd said, I mean, he had his administration, you know, figure that out. And
Yeah,
see
yeah,
which one,
but maybe just do it.
which ones are
hearing-
coming in.
Or we could do it by season, same thing like we do fall, winter, and spring, and do it an off meeting if the athletics are coming at a certain time, a different one, do the same kind of thing and highlight some of them, and they can talk for 2 minutes each on their.
Or even
We-
survey them and say,
If they'd
please
like
let
to
us
come.
know, if, you know, please notify Carrie or Jill or somebody if you're interested in participating in this.
Yeah, because I think one of the things about, I mean, if you go to relevance for the students, what's to your point, how relevant is it to some of these students to come and talk to the board?
I'm more interested than they are.
They're more interested in whatever they're doing.
My kids would rather go to work than take
You
a
know,
day off work to
so-
come here, you know?
To invite them to express that interest as a group, if they'd like to come before the board and have an opportunity, then the board is willing to create under the salute framework some time when those groups that would love that opportunity can do that.
Or may have never even considered it was a possibility before because they,
yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you. I'd love to hear more about it, but I don't know that kids want to show up here.
They're knocking down our door.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we'll let Todd and these guys go through the list and figure it out which ones they do want to come, and then I'm sure, well, we got just, what is it, 12, I'm just throwing a number, 1,300 students in the high school itself.
1,350.
I know we had tons of leaders in there, tons of speakers.
Well, we might hear more from the middle school. I mean, I appreciated the middle school group that raised money coming in here and talking about what they accomplished, and I think that was a really neat experience for them to discuss their leadership, which is kind of what you're saying, give them a venue to talk about what they've accomplished. So if it fits right, I mean, that can be great, but I don't, if they're willing, yeah.
Board meetings can go long. Would there be amount of time we'd like to keep it to, just as we organize it, 10 minutes or fewer, or is there?
I think my statement at the time was like high school band. They have 8 minutes to get on and off that field, and they're out of there, or they get penalized. I mean, not that we're going to, but no, seriously, I mean, that type of, you know, whether it's, you mentioned 3 minutes earlier, I don't know if that's sufficient time, but anyway, it'd be limited, and therefore, we know that it's not going to interrupt our meetings much.
I think it could also be at the discretion of, you know, Dr. Layden and President Sparber, when they go over the agenda, to look at it and say, you know what, we've got such a heavy agenda, we can't do it this time.
Mhm.
Or we have
Sure.
other salutes, and at this point, it would end up being, you know, too many. But there are times when we don't have any salutes, and then you could triple up, you know, like.
Yeah, but how do they
invite
plan?
2 or 3.
If you do that, how do they plan?
To a high school kid, a 5-minute speech seems like an eternity. So
That's true.
5 to 10 minutes. I mean, if it's a group, I don't mind. That's kind of what we're here for. So if they want to come talk to us, and I don't want a half-hour explanation about bass fishing, but 5-10 minutes a group is fine with me.
I also don't think we would have to try to, like, get through the whole list in any given year. I mean, this is a, you know, if it takes 3 years to do the rotation, it takes 3 years to do the rotation. I would hate to create a really cumbersome process for this that.
Yeah, I was foreseeing something much more informal too. Just
Yeah.
come tell us what you're up to.
Anything else? I think I know what we're looking for. Yeah, if not, you'll let me know.
So we'll move on to J7, approval of additional 1.0 FTE certified special education staff at Kaneland Harder Middle School.
Similar to previously when Mr. Atkins shared about the position at KBK, as the school year has concluded, as case studies have completed, there is a request here for additional staffing here at Harder, and I'll let Mr. Atkins share a few more details.
Thank you again. As the board wisely pointed out back in March, one of the challenges of having a minimum staffing plan in March is that there are a variety of unknowns. If you're familiar with the special education process, typically those last 2 or 3 weeks of school are filled with IEP meetings. Those IEP meetings result in students becoming entitled for services, increasing services, et cetera. When we did our staffing meeting for the minimum staffing plan in March, we were projecting 90 students. That was based on the hard count at that time, being served in special education at the middle school. In those IEP changes in late spring at the very end of the year, we added another 21 students. A couple of those are move-in, and many of those are 5th graders or 6th graders that have become entitled now after going through an intensive RTI process. So with trying to maintain a 15-to-1 ratio, which is the 15 special education students to 1 caseload manager, we had 6 staff with 90 kids. We now have more staff. We have 21 more kids. We're asking for 1 more FTE. If you do the division, it's 1.4, but we're not asking for that additional 0.4 at this time. Waiting to see how the summer goes with any of those students potentially moving out. We're very confident, obviously, that we're going to need the additional FTE to maintain that 15-to-1 ratio, and then this additional staff member will basically be able to pick up those additional students at the different grade levels and make sure that we're in compliance. So.
And that's all basically going to be here at Harder.
I'm sorry?
And that's basically going to be here at Harder.
Yes, only at Harder, correct.
All right, so we're legally obligated to, all right, but I understand, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, so we in March approved the minimum staffing plan.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me in April and May, we picked up more kids, that they all got new plans? Or I'm guessing my question is, seems like if we had the kids in 5th grade and knew they were going to the junior high for the most part, seems like, I guess, why wasn't that included in the minimum staffing plan?
Because it's too early still. And if you think about March to May, you have 2 6-week intervention cycles that go on there that may produce the results, that may allow those Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions to work. But when they don't, when the student does not respond to the intervention, that is when they become entitled to services. And that typically does happen in 5th grade to 6th grade. You will see a bit of a spike in entitlements at the end of the 5th grade year.
Let me try again.
Yeah.
All right, so these were kids that were already getting services?
No.
No, these are all new, from March on, these are all new kids that now qualify that didn't
I don't know the
before
exact
March.
split of how many kids have increased needs, but yes, we have 21 more kids that have IEPs that we did not have back in March.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it increased since we did this. That's what I was
Correct.
trying to get to.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
The other question is this all in your nice long presentation earlier tonight? And
These are because I had the opportunity to know that they were coming before I finished last week.
Okay.
So I did include them.
Thank
So
you.
right now, they're included in the budget.
Okay.
Anything from this point forward, though?
Creep. Summer creep.
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so other than you said like 2 move-ins, we have 19 students then who previously were not getting any services and now qualify for special education services.
Correct. And I would want to clarify, it's not that they weren't receiving intervention, but interventions are not necessarily special education services. So they've been getting.
They now need an IEP, and
Yes.
they did not previously have an
Correct.
IEP.
That is true.
Is there a red flag or anything? I mean, is this indicative of anything? Do we need to be alarmed? It seems like a lot of students that suddenly, I know you said it's normally a spike. I mean, do we need to?
I think it begs
about it?
how we're
right.
identifying
Yeah, do we
them
need to be
at the
proactive
Right.
in doing something that we're not doing?
I think it begs the question that we would ask of any instructional programming at any time. How are we doing with it? What improvements can be made? Do we see any trends? Do we see any patterns? We are having those conversations. We have those with everything. But at this point in time, it's nothing that would be a red flag. But it is definitely something that we go, what is this? What has happened here? And is this typical or atypical? It's still within the realm of typical, but it is.
How are you defining typical? We normally have about 20 kids every year that jump up?
We normally have some kids that get identified at the end of 5th grade, moving into 6th grade.
And also the overall numbers, while we don't always look at comparisons with our other Mid-Valley districts, we do, for the number of students that are eligible for services, all of our sender districts fall between 11 and 17, 11, I think it's 11 and 13% of our overall student body have received some sort of IEPs, and we fall within that realm, and this is including that group. So it does have some ebb and flow, but within our member districts, we're the same.
Yeah. I guess my next question would be, is this just because of the well, I guess you can't answer that, but I wonder if it's the transition from the grade school to the junior high that's causing anxiety or some form of transitional needs.
There may be a component of that.
I thought, and I probably am wrong, I thought that sometimes the assessment of 5th grade to 6th grade was just sometimes later in the year, and March was too early because it's a different environment. So it's kind of like guessing how an early childhood student's going to be in a kindergarten or 1st grade class. It's kind of hard to tell because you're changing the environment. So I thought maybe between 5th grade and 6th grade, it just took longer to assess some of those things because it's going to look different. But so I was expecting you to say that some of them had IEPs before and you just weren't sure if they were going to still need them, but maybe not. Maybe they're all new.
That may also be the case, that there may have been a child who is potentially being dismissed, not dismissed. Yeah, they're not going to be dismissed now. Now they're in the numbers. All of the above.
And I thought some of parents sometimes wanted the kids to sometimes try middle school different services. Yeah. So there was some discussion it's a discussion, and then you don't know where those 20 kids
Parent requests are definitely a component of this too. Parent concerns are a component of that. All of the above. Those are all pieces. So when we talk about like what's going on, is there a pattern? It would be all of those things. So the answer isn't a simple yes or no to this piece or that piece. It's all of it, and the answer this year won't be the answer next year because the students are different, the families are different, the needs
are different.
Maybe
the answer this year was 5th grade services were high. So so
that's what we'll look at.
Right, right. Yeah. I think in general. So like if another 5th grade year didn't have as many people moving into 6th grade, there might have been less uncertainty in prior years.
Absolutely.
But we will get a full special ed report at some point that would give us the results of your investigations.
Yes.
Correct? I mean, we usually do. We get that a couple times a year or once a year or something. Yeah. So at some point, all these questions, like the questions I'm asking, will be answered by Fran.
There'll be trends in
at a later board meeting.
Services trends.
Absolutely.
And one through Mid-Valley that we're not exactly sure what's happening, and you'll hear more about this in the weekly update, but vision services almost quadrupled through Mid-Valley. We're not sure where or how or why, but the number of mid students receiving services for vision quadrupled in about the last 2 years. And so whether we do a great job here or the allowances have changed, we're not sure, but those are the kind of things that we would highlight in the special ed report.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Thank you.
All right, so it looks like we're looking for a motion that the Board of Education approve the additional 1.0 FTE special education certified staff at Kaneland Harder Middle School.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Just one other quick question I meant to ask before Mr. Atkins sat down. You said the numbers would justify 1.4, but we're requesting 1.0 at this time. That 0.4 in theory will be absorbed, or we may need to come back for a 0.4, 0.5, depending upon how final numbers shape.
Based on enrollment. So we never know throughout the summer if families move, et cetera. We're talking about that difference of about 5 to 6 kids. Okay. I wouldn't want to assign the FTE prematurely.
Okay.
I know that we won't lose 10 kids, 15 kids, well, like I said, I don't know that we're doing that. The probability is very small, because it would use that many to not need the additional PPs. But additional 1.4, we can wait a little bit and see.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a roll call when you're ready.
Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. So it looks like we're on to the superintendent report.
Yes. Yes, we have speak negotiations, as Dr. Fuchs alluded to. Wednesday night, we have our next session on Wednesday. Next week, the district office is closed both Wednesday and Thursday for the holiday, and then also Wednesday for the annual carpet cleaning. They come in building by building and take over, and so they, or it's entirely closed. Cabinet retreat, go ahead.
No, I thought next week was the 4th. No, ignore me.
It is.
It is.
But you said they're coming in on Wednesday to clean the carpets.
Wednesday's the holiday.
Next week.
Yeah, Wednesday's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday's a holiday.
Yes.
Thursday's
That's
a carpet.
You have Ryan
You got
getting
the
wrong
days
day at
covered.
work.
Sorry about that.
No, just-
Sometime next week, a couple days next week.
Sorry.
Cabinet retreat, we do it here locally, we stay on site, but July 10th and 12th, it's a great opportunity for the 6 of us to sit down and continue to evaluate Kaneland 2020, prepare our presentation that we share with you guys in August. Looking forward to that. One note of a small concern that I'll share with you more moving forward is the Every Student Succeeds Act. I think the state of Illinois always does a great job of taking a concept and then somehow it shifts and becomes problematic at times. Being nice again, Ryan, and being politically correct. And so what I think has happened, or what you may see coming, that we're going to have to make sure we communicate. What may happen is there may be a listing of schools in the state of Illinois by their scores in ESSA. There's a number of factors that go into play, and what they want to do is they want to assign a grade A, B, C, D, and F. Top 20% are A schools, the next 20% are B schools, C, D, and then F, which we don't know what that's going to look like. We've heard that maybe they will do that and then just give the information to the districts, embargo it for 3 years, and not make it public. But I think there are enough groups that like to get that information and make it public, so that may be something. I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Don't know when that timeline might be or what it's going to be, but wanted to let you know in advance. So if you hear anything about that with ESSA and any sort of a grading fluctuation by the 5 tiers of same grades that we assign students, that may be coming down the road. Don't want to let you know that. And
Don't they know about bell-shaped curves and normal distribution?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sure that the lower performing grades, I'm sure they're going to then increase funding so that those schools can, bring those scores up, correct?
there are some grants there, but it's not going to be enough to make up for those gaps. But I should have started with that one and not ended with it, but that's what I had for you. So, sorry, that was the last part. Dr. Fuchs?
Oh, good. Can I add to that then?
Yes,
on the
please do.
ESSA? So as a part of that law, the federal law, our business department, in combination with all the administrators, we have to, for this 18-19 budget, at the end of the 18-19 school year, we have to report expenditures to ISB by building, which is new. Usually we haven't had to do that before. The purpose of doing that is similar to what Dr. Layden just explained. We can then anticipate that our expenditure per student by school will be on our school report card in October of 19. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, 18, 19.
19.
Yep, October of 19. So similarly to the whole grade system, they're going to show how much expenditures are per school alongside any test score results that are already on the report cards, the school report cards. And so as we move forward in that process, I'll continue to update the board on what we might expect. Fortunately, we only have one high school and one middle school, so okay. But at the 4 elementaries,
we're going to be looking at those expenditures. The thing that shifts, as you well know, your budget, our budget is made up of 75 to 80% salary and benefits. If we happen to have an elementary school with a significantly more experienced staff, their expenditures per student will be greater than an elementary school with new staff members, a majority. So we're watching that to see how that all shakes out, because that's where it's going to shift.
So we could get, for example, the kids we're spending more money on the kids at Blackberry Creek because they have a more experienced staff than Stewart, so.
Right, and then let's play it both ways. Say, for example, those same group of students where we're spending more money, say, for example, they have the highest test scores or the lowest test scores, and you can start to envision the conversations that will become of those. So I'm hopeful to be able to do a dry run based on 17-18 data, but it just depends on if all the software components cooperate. Because currently we put all elementary salaries into one account, and now we're breaking it up into 4 accounts so we can know where they go, and so we're seeing how that plays out.
So I'm not sure what the data says about, student performance based on, experience level of teachers. I would assume that more experienced teachers produce, better performing students for the most part. Do we try to make it equitable across those 4 schools that, so that we don't end up with one school stacked with most of the experienced teachers? Because it would seem that we should be, along with diversity and all those kind of things, that we're also looking at that experience level and making sure that the average experience level is somewhat equitable.
What I can tell you, I'm going to defer to Mr. Atkins really quick here, but to my knowledge, that has not been one of our deciding factors. Dr. Mumm generally does that distribution based on needs of students and buildings, but perhaps you have some more insight that you could share with us.
Right. I think that it's, again, a very complicated question. And when you're creating teams at the elementary level, you're also looking at the dispositions and skill sets of the individuals involved, which may or may not be impacted by their experience level and how much we pay those people. We're more interested in making sure that you have a variety of perspectives and personalities and such on a grade level team, so that students can experience that as they switch back and forth, do some flexible grouping. We're looking to make sure that the relative strengths and weaknesses of one second grade teacher is complemented by the relative strengths and weaknesses of their peer at that grade level, and those kinds of things. And those things may be connected to longevity and experience, but at the same time they may not be. Could it be a factor moving forward because of all this? Of course. But would it be a sole determinant, and would that trump the creation of a very effective team to create that? It's a great question. It's one we've not had to grapple with yet. But I know that in addition to that one factor, there's a whole, the elementary principals start discussing staffing placements internally, the 4 of them, like in December, and it takes them a long time to make sure that they're matching the best attributes of all of those people together to really build on those strengths. So,
and I guess I did say experience only, but education level, I can see where if you had all the master's degree teachers, elementary teachers in one building, as a parent, that would bother me if my kid didn't go to that school. So it's not just how many days they've showed up or how many years they've put in. But, salaries do increase based on, lane movement,
So it'll be an interesting discussion and analysis. But other than that, I don't have anything to share. Thank you.
Anyone have anything else? We'll move on to topics for future agendas.
All right.
I even need to say it?
Yes.
Shall we discuss cursive writing as being required to be taught or not? I guess not required to be Whether or not we want to require that kids be fluent in cursive writing, is that the right way to phrase the question?
Proficient, fluent.
Proficient. I would suggest that I think we should discuss it, but
Thumbs up over here. You know what you do?
And probably a little bit more to what you guys were saying before, which was, you know, I see that more as an instructional question, but I see how some community members have feelings on that too.
Perhaps there could be a reporting to us, like in a Friday update or something of, I don't know, the trend or the.
But I guess we're supposed to direct them in what we want taught, more or less. Mm-hmm. So isn't that are you just saying you want to defer to them as to what? I guess I'm not understanding you're not wanting to discuss it, so I'm asking.
Okay. I think I think it's a dance floor issue. I think it's not.
Okay.
It isn't necessarily board work. Setting policy, complying with state law. Yes, we've done that tonight.
Okay.
And we will do it again when we approve it on second reading.
Okay.
How that's carried out is Dr. Layden's. He can report it out to us, but I don't believe it's something that I don't believe. Like, we wouldn't go in and say, I mean, to just equate it to something else. We wouldn't say an art teacher needs to teach, you know, figures and sketching and watercolor.
Okay,
and because of, you know, so to me, that level is Dr. Layden's purview. And
okay, and now I understand your point, and I guess my counterpoint would be if they decided that we want to now teach Mandarin versus French, I see it as a subject matter that we're discussing what we have the children taught. So in my mind, I'm looking at it as, well, we decide whether or not they teach this, so this is a course of instruction that we weigh in on. So I guess I would prefer to weigh in on this particular course of instruction. Thank you.
Okay. I get the desire to do that. It's to me it feels like an overstep.
Okay.
And I understand why there's an interest.
I guess is there some basis upon which we as a board, and maybe sort of from your perspective as in voice of the community, maybe there does not have to be kind of, this to me feels like a discussion that's more emotional than that people let me just, because I'm just sort of processing out loud, but that people believe people should know how to learn cursive, or they believe that cursive will probably die a natural death over the next 20 years, just like football will. So
that's when you're going to get the calls on.
Press isn't here this evening, but for everybody at home, I think that, so I guess if there's a basis for the discussion, and maybe it's a good enough basis to have the discussion about opinions, but if there was more of a basis that was based on something that looked at trends, data, pattern, something, I'd feel better having that conversation, being informed about the state of cursive in Illinois or in America or in comparable districts than just sort of saying, my daughter can only read a digital clock. She really can't read an analog clock. And that's not the end of the world. It's just a different skill set. Is cursive just another skill set that may or may not be essential? And I guess
that's kind of where I'm going with it. Like, maybe I kind of see it as like they used to teach Latin. They don't anymore. There's a reason for that. I try and stay away from purely emotional debates, but it seems like there's got to be something out there other than we just decided it doesn't fit in the schedule anymore. It doesn't seem, and that may or may not be the reason, but I guess I'd like to delve further into why it's going away or why we're going to keep it instead of just kind of, it happened.
What if you threw in the word impacting to the students?
Well,
whether they have it or not.
I guess, I feel like you've all listened to me. I appreciate it. We can move forward. We don't have to have the debate to have the debate.
Yeah,
just
thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm in between.
I'm kind of in between too. I just really don't.
Peter, it's up to you.
I don't see it. Pavlak vote. No.
Oh.
Yeah. There's only 6 of us tonight, though.
I know.
24.
How would Aaron have voted? How would Aaron have voted?
That means it failed?
A tie
It's in the
fails.
middle.
No, tie means
A tie fails.
No, I appreciate you raising the issue, though. I think it's a interesting question.
All right.
I have one other one that I don't necessarily know that we need to have a board debate, but based on a couple conversations I've had about how the hiring practice works in the district, I'd like more information on how that whole process comes to be. As far as, I know we hired a transportation director, and this is just the example, I'm not criticizing in any way, but I guess sometimes there is board member involvement when we hire certain position levels. Sometimes there's not. I have no idea what that break point or why that is there, or at what level that needs to be, or I guess we have different size groups of people interview candidates, and I'm sure there's some logical reason as to why, but I have no idea why it varies. So I'd like more information on how the whole hiring process works within the district, but not necessarily to question it, just so I understand it better.
Does that include like all employees or certain types, like for example, teachers?
I guess I'm kind of opening a can of worms that I don't know where I want it to stop, but I
didn't know if you felt like there's more of that, so maybe that's a little bit more of a standard process, but.
I guess I'm uneducated, so I'm just looking for
What the
more.
process is.
I have a similar confusion as to which, okay, so like we hire an athletic director and we have community members come in and we have board member involvement, and I'm not sure if that's because we requested it. And then we hire a transportation director, which is also somebody who has extensive contact with parents and employees and things like that, and then that position isn't done in the same manner. And I guess I'm wondering which what's what, which is what. How do you decide? Is there, do we need a policy? Do we need to say, I don't know if you want to put it down in policy, but or is there a procedure? And I guess I'm with Ryan. I don't really need to.
Yeah, I'm not looking
I don't
to
really
debate
feel like
anything.
I need to express my opinion about it. I just need to. I would just like to understand it.
Because someone asked me, and my honest answer, no idea. So, and it was in regards to the transportation director, which fine, but that just opened up my eyes to, hey, how does this whole thing work? And I really don't know.
I think it'll give us an opportunity to have a good conversation just for consistency purposes moving forward. So that way when we do hire certain positions, that this is what the board knows is going to take place. Because I would think or I can say, with me coming in 2 years ago, with Chris, or 3 years ago, Chris being new 2 years ago, I'm sure we're not 100% consistent across this.
Mm-hmm.
And to what degree do we need to? That's a conversation that we'll have, and we'll give you some feedback on that. We'll provide that.
And if you could also, another question I have is what the makeup of the committee that, as far as, who you.
Board or community input.
Not how you choose, I guess, what makes up a committee, a hiring committee?
Or how do you determine who's on the?
I would think you would want equity in certain things, like you would want different buildings represented, different, position levels, different genders, different diversity, I guess all those things, what goes into the decision on who sits on a committee.
So, thank
Got it.
you. That was.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
So is that a presentation or is that a? What is that?
It's
We'll do some homework and we'll let you know. I don't know if it'll be a document that we use with a flow chart on it. I don't know if it'll be, here's a variation here. If it ends up being this, we'll do that. But it'll be good conversation for us to have internally because it has been different based on different things. And some's based on the time of the year, some's based on what the need may be right then, might be availability of candidates. I think like a negotiation committee with SPEAK versus KEA versus other groups, it's based on who's available and expertise, but that's something we can try to put some parameters around so at least the board understands.
All right, well, this is the second opportunity for public comment.
Three.
No. It's so lonely out there. All right. Then we will see if I can figure out my executive session spiel. All right, so we are scheduled for executive session where we anticipate action to be taken following the executive session. Once the executive session has concluded, the recording will include the action taken by the Board of Education planned for this evening. We will be going into executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, as well as collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. So I believe I would like to entertain a motion that the Kaneland Board of Education
adjourn to.
Did you say whether we'll be taking action or not?
We will be. Sorry. That was
I might not have heard it. That's fine.
All right, that we go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
And do we roll call this one? I think we do. Roll call?
Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. So this is concluded at 9:45. 6 p.m. And we will take action on our 2 items. The first would be, let's see, second page. Yes, I'd like to entertain a motion that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the Memorandum of Understanding for Educational Attainment with the Kaneland Education Association, KEA.
So moved.
Second? Yep. Any discussion?
Who seconded it? You did?
I moved.
Yeah, sure, I second.
Okay.
All right, no discussion. Roll call.
Myself, aye. Rivas?
Aye.
Sparber?
Aye.
Witt?
Aye.
Carey?
Aye.
All is absent. Peyton?
Aye.
So I've got 6 and 0.
All right, motion carries. And the second order of business will be the approval of the former I-4, which is approval of the amended resignations in employment of staff, which was then moved to J8.
So moved.
Teresa, second?
Second.
Who seconded?
Peter.
Peter?
We switched.
I should have said, is there a second? All right, yes, I'm confusing everybody. Roll call?
Okay, so this is 1 and this is 2. Okay. Kaneland, aye. Rivas?
Aye.
Sparber?
Aye.
Witt?
Aye.
Carey?
Aye.
Peyton?
Aye.
6 and 0.
All right.
Okay, so she
So then this will conclude the video recording, but we will go back into executive session. I think I need to read that again, correct?
Time at
Call it 10:30.
10:30?
Do I need to read it again or no? No,
Yes.
we're good. Yes. We're going into back to executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, as well as collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
So moved.
Second. And then I think we have to have a roll call.
Roll call,
Roll call?
go back in. Yep.
Yep.
Another roll call, Gail.
Shauna?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Gail? Aye. Pedro?
Aye.
Teresa?
Aye.
I think that's 6-0, hopefully.
I think 6-0.
All right.